everyone. This is Stella Odom, the producer, creator of Syntax for Twin Strangers Productions. And I am here with... Do you want to introduce yourself?
Certainly. I am Ty Vaughn. I am the writer and the voice actor for Silas Caldwell on the show. And I am here to ruin your day with spoilers and false answers.
He doesn't mean that, I promise.
I absolutely 100% mean that. Look me straight in the eye and see that I mean that.
I can't. We're over computer, but
spoiler time, baby.
Spoiler time. We're over computer right now. So this is going to be our Q&A for the season 1 of Syntax. We finished season 1 about a month ago, actually. At the time of recording, where it's right after Thanksgiving in the US, and doesn't feel like it's been that long already, but it definitely has.
It definitely ended yesterday. I don't know what you're talking about.
Right, exactly. But we are basically wanting to do a Q&A, kind of talking about the first season. We had a form that we sent out to our social medias in the sorts to gather questions from y'all and see exactly what you were wondering about the first season or the production of Syntax or Twin Strangers Productions as a whole. So, yeah, I'm pretty psyched. How are you feeling, Ty?
I still can't believe that we're here, to be honest.
I can't either. I absolutely cannot believe that we've gotten this far with Syntax, that we've been able to actually get questions from people. I thought we were going to send the form out and no one was going to ask us anything.
Everybody was just going to be like, we understand everything. Everything is clear as crystal. I already understand where the story's going. This is unoriginal as all get out. But it turns out that's not the case.
It was either going to be that or just no responses at all. And the only reason there were no responses was because people didn't actually care.
Nobody cares about these breachers.
Yeah, surprisingly, a lot of people care about the breachers, which is great.
Shocking number.
We care about the breachers a lot too, clearly. We are a little obsessed with our show and with our characters too, I think. Don't you think?
Just a touch.
Just a touch obsessed.
Just a touch, you might say.
It's just a healthy obsession where we can kind
of
put it into the show. You know, we're not taking anything away from it.
If they drink green shakes, then it's healthy for us to consume
It's
them.
healthy for us, yeah.
You are what you eat.
Yeah, we don't do anything that's unhealthy. Like, if one of them smoked cigarettes, if they were even able to get cigarettes, we wouldn't be doing that, at least.
True.
But I doubt Vo lets them have cigarettes anyways.
Vo brings the smoke show all on her own, am I right?
Good one. So, basically what we did for the Q&A is we put out different questions regarding different subjects for season 1 of Syntax. So, our first category that we put out was basically plot-related questions. Now, obviously, with some of these questions, we can't expand upon them a lot because there are more seasons to come. There's going to be more content for y'all and just a lot more Syntax in general. So we don't want to spoil it for y'all, and we know y'all don't want to be spoiled. So we're going to try to limit our answers on some of the more less spoiler friendly. No, Ty will also limit his answers. But yeah, we have a few questions for the plot. So with our Patreon and Ko-fi, we do have basically like a system where whoever is a Ko-fi or Patreon sub gets to be the first to ask questions. That's if kind of we have more than intended, which we do have quite a lot. So I don't know.
5 pages.
Yeah, we have 5 pages of questions. I don't know how many we'll be able to go through, but we're going to try to go through them all. And if, some of them are a little redundant, then we'll skip them and we'll be like, oh, we answered that previously, we think. But yeah. So
we're going to give it the old college try.
Yeah, the old college try. Really get in there. The old breacher try, So yeah, first category we have is going to be our plot questions.
The juicy ones.
The juicy plot of Syntax. We know no one loves our characters, clearly, so like everyone's here for the plot only.
True.
So it's just for that, right? So these are the best questions, clearly. It's not like we have 70 questions for our characters or anything.
Fair point.
Okay, so these first sets of questions, I'm just going to name the people who asked them once, because we had a lot of people put in a bunch of questions for the same person, which is totally fine. I wanted y'all to ask as many questions as possible, so it's great. But I'm only going to say the person who asked them once until we're done with their questions for the category. Does that make sense to you, Ty?
That makes sense.
Cool. Okay.
I didn't know you were going to name who mentioned it at all. I was just going to leave them anonymous. They knew who asked.
Yeah, it's more of like they put their name if they didn't want to be anonymous. So
I see. Okay.
Yeah. So, our first set of questions is going to be from one of our Ko-fi Patreon supporters, Rain. He has a lot of questions in here.
Yes, he does.
Many questions. But the first we can go with is, why go with the Akkadian culture for the show? Just to expand on that a little bit, the book that Silas is translating, the translatable part of the book rather, is in Akkadian. So that's the language that we chose to give him a little bit of, help with the language.
True.
Do you want to talk about that?
So why did we choose that?
Are you asking me? Is this a Stella question?
What was the Akkadian reasoning there?
So whenever we created Syntax, I guess I knew I wanted a linguist, and I knew I wanted it to be about an ancient language of some sort.
Ancient languages are too cool.
Yeah, they really are. I've always been really inspired by linguistics and the whole, formation of language as a whole. And I really wanted something old and something not well known. We got to make our main character a little special sometimes. It's like the protagonist chosen one aspect, but not so much chosen one, because there are other people who know Akkadian. There are other people who study Akkadian because it is one of the oldest cuneiform languages. But yeah, I found it. We found it when we were researching, and it really stuck with me as far as like the time period and everything, as well as like the point of the plot, like why it's in that time period and everything, which has not been revealed, but it really just kind of did everything for us. And also it's an interesting language. I really liked looking it up and kind of researching what it looks like and everything.
Very good point.
So, what about you? Did you have any inspiration from Akkadian on your side?
I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, and this definitely needs to stay in the video. I just wanted to hear you try and BS your way out of going, why Akkadian?
Listen, I have reasons, okay?
This is true.
I remember.
When we sat down and did all the world building stuff, we definitely thought really hard about which civilization we should go off of, because there's a lot of options when you're thinking about ancient civs. If you want to portray the idea of antiquity in the show, like, you could go with like Egyptian, you could go with like forms of Chinese that are more ancient. There's, a lot of cultures that are in the same time span around the Akkadian time. But Akkadian was interesting, as you said, because it's one of the first examples of a written, not even necessarily hieroglyphic, but actually cuneiform, like actual alphabet usage language. And it has a lot of aspects in it that other cultures weren't going to offer to the specific things that we were looking at. The way that it's a dual language book works kind of like a Rosetta Stone, but obviously the Rosetta Stone was for Egyptian. Now you have something where you have a similar kind of, not self-translating, but something that you can draw from text. I forget, there's a specific word for that in linguistics, but we could use that and be like, okay, there's a couple of oddities going on here that have already been presented in the show, so we don't have to like explain why yet, but you already latch onto it. Akkadian ceased to be spoken, and somewhere around, I think from my reading, it was somewhere around 500
Yeah, I
before
believe.
BCE. So not many people were still using it, and now you've got this book that outdates the Akkadian culture and language by 1500 years. Somebody bothered to actually translate it and maintain it for that period of time and keep it the way it was. They didn't even like bother translating it into some more modern language. Like, if you're talking 1000 AD, you could have turned it into some kind of Italian, maybe some kind of French, some language that was developing during the medieval period. If it was, being translated in Europe, or even wherever it may have been ended up, somebody must have shown care to keep up the text, but then they didn't bother to update it to some kind of modern lingua franca.
Yeah.
What's the deal with that? And Akkadian helped us to do that, because if you chose something else, like Egyptian or Chinese, like I said, you could reasonably say, oh, well, maybe it was just like kind of a hand-me-down, like an old style language that just kept being translated. But with Akkadian, you have this clear demarcation point where like people stop speaking it.
Yeah.
And now it's still here. Why is that?
It definitely makes a point of it being an older text, something that's not easily found or easily,
and why hold on to
talked about. Right, exactly. There's a lot of lore tied to this as well.
Yeah,
so,
we didn't choose the Akkadian just kind of off the cuff, I don't think.
No,
like,
definitely
we
not.
had to look really hard and be like, this one is the one that's going to work.
Yeah, it was definitely a purposeful decision for sure. All right. Great answers from us. Woo!
Oh, thank you.
All right, Ty, do you want to go with the next question?
Sure. Another plot question comes in, says, what were some of your biggest inspirations for the show? Stella, would you like to answer this question?
Hornet, I hope you're not listening. So a big reason why I made Syntax is because I had just finished listening to the Magnus Archives. I'm sure everyone in the audio drama community knows that name by now. And if you haven't, then that's fine too. But it's one of the more well-known horror pieces in the audio drama universe. By
Love
Rusty
it,
Quill.
like it, or hate it. It's very, like you said, very popular, and it definitely launches a lot of ships, because sometimes your response to it can, whether positive or negative, can make you decide to get into this and make your own thing.
Yes, because a lot of times you'll in my experience of like growing up and seeing other things made, I've always been one of those people who are like, I wonder if I could do that my way. So I would say Magnus Archives for sure. Night Vale I listen to a lot as well, pretty extensively. There's also some media inspirations as well. I know everyone jokes about like Atlantis, the Disney movie, Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
I wondered if you were going to be brave enough to say the word.
I don't mind. I think people are free to be inspired by things for sure.
That's true.
But yeah, other than that, if we're not talking about media perspectives of inspiration either, I would say COVID is probably a big inspiration, because
the feeling of being locked down but having to delve inward to find new worlds.
It really is kind of like, once you're put into that zone, which I've always been an introvert, but once you're put into that zone where you're kind of forced to stay in a place, or not able to do life as quote unquote you normally did, even if you are introverted, I definitely feel like that played a role in my wanting to create something and like wanting to found something that would be meaningful to other people. So I would say that. What about you, Ty? Do you have any inspirations in your writing?
I always love a good adventure story, going back to
found family stories as well.
Definitely. Some of the classic novels, storybooks that I would read, like Treasure Island, or
Mm-hmm.
like yeah, I'm trying to think of like specific examples. Because in my family we had like a bunch of classic books. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't have like the latest novels, but we would have things like, oh, like Count of Monte Cristo and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of those stories, I think, have they'll say in like writing terms, some of the older adventure novels deal a lot with like nature
Yeah,
versus the characters as
for
opposed to
sure.
looking to other forces, and being able to do it in like a horror show in this aspect. Obviously there's going to be a lot of character interactions and things like that, but I really liked that kind of people versus wild
Mm-hmm.
aspect
Mm-hmm.
where, you know, we have clear influences in the show where it's not like the critters in the breach are enemy, but it
Mm-hmm.
is the forces that we're up against that we're trying to overcome during our explorations, during trying to find out more about what's going on. And it's kind of a survival adventure
Yeah.
story, right?
Yeah,
Like
for sure.
it's there's a big aspect to that, and I've always enjoyed that
I've
because,
always enjoyed that as well, for sure.
yeah, we don't have to focus on like a big Darth Vader-y kind of person. As
Mm-hmm.
good as that is in certain situations, this now is
For
something where
example,
it's a
Darth
lot more
Vader.
nebulous. Yeah, for example, Darth Vader. Obviously, it's done well in other media, and it's not like I hate it in particular, but it's always neat when you can make the problem something that's not personalized. We
Yes.
have personal problems in the show,
Mm-hmm.
Vo. I'm looking
Don't
at
get
you.
us wrong.
But and like even some of our characters can be,
Yeah.
jackasses sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
but the biggest problem are things like, well, are we doing season 1 spoilers for this? Like I can mention specific critters
Yeah.
in season 1.
Yeah. Season one. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I hope so. The things like the Thunderbird, or like
Mm-hmm.
the moth creatures, or even like Acid Nessie, all of these things are obstacles in the way that they have to find ways around without necessarily eradicating it. We have Cassius as the lead for a very specific reason, because we want somebody who's a little more conscientious of that and isn't just
Yeah.
like, load them up, put the shotguns in the back, we're
Right.
blowing our way through everything.
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely wanted it to be like not not a totally, oh yeah, we're just gonna use our gun and shoot everything on sight because we're awful people kind of thing.
Yeah, a
It
little Indiana Jones without as much reliance
yeah.
on like pistols and stuff. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
still going to get a lot of the survival aspect and a lot of the adventure and like traps and things like that are going to spring on you, but it's not like, I mean, we may end up punching Nazis later. Who knows? That
Who
might be
knows?
down the road for Cassius. That would definitely
Yeah,
be something they would do.
absolutely.
But for now, it's like, you know, get a rope and climb up the tree and save the linguist kind of vibe, and that's
Yeah, and I very much
always
appreciate
much
that
more
kind of
fun.
thing too, because it's like it puts everyone in a situation where they have to be up against one common force, you know? It's not even like
Exactly.
if we're being honest, it's not really it could also be Vincula with the breachers against everything that's found in the breach, right? I wouldn't even say
Definitely, definitely.
it's all the time just breachers against nature. It's everyone in the story against nature, or what's being found in these breaches. So I think that's super cool because it gives you a lot more room to explore as well. I Some of the best parts in the story for me are some of the things that are like found in the breaches, like where it's certain creatures or certain specimens that they're collecting or finding, and they're making a report on them. I love those moments just because it's so interesting to me.
Hmm.
So anyway, before I completely bring everything off topic, let's go to the
I,
next question.
I was noticing the next question, and that's why I didn't bring up the other half of
Yes.
the antagonistic side yet, because we
Yes.
clearly don't just have versus nature in mind.
Right, right.
There is another aspect.
So Ty is looking at the next question, which is why did you decide to make the relationship with Vincula and Vo antagonistic? So
Mm.
love a big corpo. Love a big evil corpo with one like figurehead kind of thing, kind of vibe, you know? I've always liked evil corpo stuff because it's not to say it's, too common, but it's definitely in real life as well. So I think a lot of people can empathize with it. And it's just
It's
like an
an easy
interesting thing
trope
to
to latch
explore.
onto. in this day and age, isn't it?
It's a really interesting thing to explore, and you can also kind of live vicariously through the people who are going against those kind of companies and all that kind of stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how in depth we want to get with this one, Ty, because there are some lore reasons with this as well.
I mean, the only other thing I would say is that anytime you involve a corporation whose bottom line is just like profit, it always begs the question, why are they bothering with something that seems more almost historical in nature? Like, why get into the museum or artifact business in the first place? And obviously, within the first couple episodes, you realize that the breaches are a lot more than they seem. There's a lot more to the book and things like that. But why even start that?
Right.
And why continue with it unless there's something else going on? And doing that through the eyes of a corporation was an interesting way to explore that, as opposed to having it be more like, there's always something a little bit unbelievable about just ordinary people trying to pull something like this off.
Yeah.
Like, imagine this show, but it's 6 ordinary people who just find this thing and decide to become the breachers because they just go and do it. That may be possible, it works in some settings, but for the most part, it's like somebody really influential is going to see that this thing is very different, very supernatural almost, be very interested in it and start trying to plumb its depths and try to find people who would be willing to look into it. Because like you said, in a lot of media, you're going to see a big evil corpo and you're going to be like, okay, the big evil corpo is just going to have a bunch of faceless people performing the tasks for them. But in fact, what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of ordinary folks who are just like, oh yeah, it's my day job, doing this kind of stuff. And we have this aspect developed. It's like, Vincula is clearly just bottom line kind of company looking at the dollar bills, but we're looking at the individual lives of the people they pick up to do something nefarious and are like, okay, how can we influence that? What is our part in this? How do we explore that? And it's always comes off antagonistic because sometimes that doesn't align. Everybody wants their daily bread. Everybody wants to put food on the table, but also what might that come at cost for, right? What is that going to entail when you start digging into it? What are our characters going to have to do in the name of science, or in the name of profit, or in the name of themselves, or in the name of goodness or evil, or whatever we're going to explore? Vincula is going to be pushing really hard on all of them to figure out what that's going to be, what their influences are, or motivations are, rather.
Absolutely. So a short answer: Vincula bad.
Vincula bad. Vincula like money. Vincula make
like
you go
money.
do things.
But also,
Vincula have money to burn.
Why Vincula to make you do things? Things to ponder for y'all, hopefully. All right, Ty, next question.
Sure. What folklore inspired you the most?
This is a good question.
This is a really good one.
This is a good question.
Because we talked a little bit about like modern or even classical inspiration, but now what are the grandma tales that made us want to do this?
So I'm not sure if y'all can tell, but I like cryptids a lot. Quite a few of our creatures are inspired by mostly like American or even like England, UK area cryptids, right? Stuff that we're familiar with. We have like the chameleonic ape, which is our version of a Bigfoot story. We've got Acid Nessie or Titan plesiosaur, which is our version of Loch Ness Monster. Like there's quite a few cryptids that are definitely set for inspirations from the show. But I just love finding different cryptids and different like creatures that might not necessarily be explored a lot in creepypastas or in like old wives' tales. There's a lot of stuff that you can just find from people's imagination and then get inspired by it, honestly. Like some of the creatures we made up entirely by ourselves too, like, or had like a foundation from a creature, but then we just took it on its head and kind of spun it. So I would say, just a lot of the cryptid stories from around the world, but as well as creepypastas and just our own horrors of the night, really.
But I have to re-ask the question because I feel like it
Okay.
was pointed at which one, if you had to pick one, would inspire you the most.
One like folklore.
Because we do know that Stella be loving a cryptid story.
I
And you
do.
did mention a couple that came out right away. But
so
I feel
there's
like
one in particular that I always
Mhm.
think about a lot, because it deeply unsettles me.
Oh.
It's a so it's a book based on Grimm's fairy tales. I don't know if it's actually by the Brothers Grimm's or if it's like um a spin-off of that, but it's basically a retelling of what are the two twins who go in the woods and they get eaten by the witch? Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel. Yeah.
It's a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, and basically what happens in the book. By the way, I will probably know the name of this in just a little bit, but like it escapes me right now. Basically in the book, it's another Hansel and Gretel situation. So it's these two siblings, and they're dumped off in the woods by their parent figure, and they find the witch in the woods. So it goes the same way in that aspect, but the witch basically does it differently than like putting them in a pot and stewing them up for dinner.
Mhm.
She kind of like locks them in cages, and she's got this cat that has her eyes. So her face actually doesn't have any eyes. She's like eyeless, void kind of thing.
Right, right.
And her cat is the one who watches for all of the mishappenings and everything around
Oh.
her house, and it's actually like an underground facility that she has. It is crazy. I'm 100% sure now that I'm talking about it that it could have been a fever dream. But
I was
I'm
about to say,
pretty
is this
sure.
either some kind of SCP spinoff or
No,
Grimm's Retold?
it was definitely a book because I remember it had multiple stories in the book. But that was one that like stays with me for a lot of reasons, just because of the whole creepy vibe. I remember there were like some spider webs involved, which if y'all know me, you know I hate spiders. Um
Actual arachnophobia.
Actual arachnophobia.
I've
But
seen it in
yeah,
action.
yes.
Roots to the spot.
There's been that story in particular is one that does inspire me a lot as far as folklore specific goes. Also, other than that, I love tales of shadow people. Shadow people in particular
Mm.
is one that I always am drawn to. Probably
Strangers in
not
the
the
corners
best
of your
thing.
eye.
Yeah. I don't have night paralysis, but I feel like if I did, it would definitely be a shadow creature kind of thing. Um, and that was one of our first stories that we explored. So I was really happy to do that as one of the primary creatures for Silas as
True,
well.
that
So
did kind of turn into Silas's origin story, didn't it?
mm-hmm.
It's very
Yeah, I
good.
very much like some shadow people vibes.
These are good answers. These are good answers. I feel like I may have heard of some kind of like Grimm's Retold. I'm trying to
Yeah,
call it
it's
like Grimm's
definitely a
Fairy
book.
Tales Retold or something like that, but I'm not sure if I've ever read it. I may have just heard about it.
Yeah,
We'll
it's
have to
definitely a
take a look
book.
at it later.
Yeah, I want to
Um,
know now.
as far as my folklore, I've always enjoyed hearing stories about cryptids. I wouldn't say I'm as driven on them as you are, but
Mm-hmm.
hearing stories about strange creatures or even like dragons or fairies and things like that. I mean, we all be out here inspired by Lord of the Rings. We all know that.
Truly.
Nobody can even front that Tolkien hasn't spawned 1,000, a million ships off of his one thing. But there is something really fascinating about how stories used to be passed down by word of mouth, and those
Yeah.
turned into, like we call it folklore, that we now have, like Grimm's fairy tales, and we treat them as stories for children.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason we treat them that way is because you're supposed to pass this down. You're supposed to treat these things as almost sacred. and pass it along from person to person. So even just hearing about it is a cool thing because somebody had some kind of experience or somebody told the story, even if it was just completely fictional off the top of their head, and it was important enough that we all needed to know about it. So I always like hearing about them. And I think some of my favorite ones were the ones I used to hear in like the extreme northern South United States, Midwest area, where you would get a lot of skinwalker stories.
Oh, yeah.
People who would assume different shapes, or who would look like a close friend, or who would look like someone completely different, and you would think that person was part of your group all along. And actually, that person was never there in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those kind of stories are very prevalent along like Mason-Dixon line area, you know, going all through the United States. You've got skinwalkers, you've got what's the other term for them? There's another word for
the bad word.
Something that can the bad word.
There's the folklore is that these people often talk about their Native American descent, and they believe if you say the name, then you know it's inviting them in.
Oh, right.
I don't actually recall what the name is right now. I know what you're talking about. It's more of a like cultural name for it,
right?
But I don't remember what it's called.
But clearly those stories go way back, and we kind of have, you can tell in season 1 we have a couple moments where there's kind of like a whodunit vibe going on. We even kind of ape it a little bit when we have Lizzie do her crazy stunt on the link stone. And everybody's like, well, she's a flesh demon now.
Yeah.
But when I, you know, I'm writing for Syntax and even into the future, I like those stories where just something just isn't as it seems.
Uncanny Valley vibes.
Yeah, not necessarily drawing straight from that and just I don't think you're gonna have a moment down the line where we're just like, oh yeah, here's a Robin. Yeah, he's always been here. Don't worry about that guy. He's always kind of done that. Maybe a little cheesy because I have read a little
weird.
I've read a lot of copy pastas, and sometimes it's done well where it is like, oh yeah, this strange 7th person arrived, and I felt like I always knew who they were, but they're just not who they are. But those stories were always, it's the fact there's so many and they're so prevalent across many different cultures, even people assuming different forms, that it's like that's really interesting.
Feels like there's always a little kernel of truth within those
exactly what is the real thing behind it? That is the most fascinating part of all of it.
Totally.
Oh boy.
Oh man,
this next cue though,
this is my cue, isn't it? So the next question is, what hot goss can you spill about the love triangle between Lizzie, Silas, and Cassius?
Well,
no comment.
Let me tell you guys exactly what's going on back there. So,
oh Lord. He's going to be like, so, and then he's going to say, they are good friends.
They are the best of friends. Actually, really no. We have clear antagonism going on between some of them, and that is very funny.
That is hilarious.
Some of my favorite fluff moments in the story are where they get to be a little sassy with each other. It's most obvious with Silas and Lizzie, because generally when those two meet, it is like on
two dogs
site.
Barking at each other.
Exactly. They're both academic types, Lizzie and Silas. Of the Breachers, they would probably be most likely to be found with their noses in a book and just buried in the corner somewhere, trying not to talk to people. But the thing that makes them so antagonistic is they would be two very different books that the two of them were trying to read.
Absolutely.
And they would get into debates about things like whether monster stories or love stories or like Shakespeare or R.L. Stein are better authors.
Right. It'd be like it'd totally be something like, oh, Lizzie's reading War of the Worlds and Silas is reading fucking Homer
Tempest for the third time.
Yeah, like Homer's Odyssey, something like that. Like
Yep. He's translating.
Definitely those vibes.
It's still in like the ancient Greek, and he's actively translating.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's some tensions about, we shall say that. I think.
yeah, that is some of the best moments, and because of that, you're definitely going to see a lot more of it. Is
Yeah.
a
You
lot of
can
what I will
look
say.
forward to it.
There's going to be a lot expounded on between their relationship, because I think also something that kind of intensifies what the three of them are going through is they're also the three that kind of have the most at stake, so to speak. A lot of the other characters, so far, their motivations have been revealed as being like kind of mercenary, kind of I'm here to prove myself kind of vibe. These three have like a different take, whether it's they're being pressured by external forces, or they have a desire to preserve the things inside, or there's a mystery that they're trying to unravel. These three are going to probably be at the forefront of that, because bless Alex's heart, but I don't think Alex is going to be the one solving the Rubik's Cube 28 by 28 puzzle that is the breach.
Sorry.
Alex would be interested in the answer, but I don't think she's going to be the one to put it together. Greg and Jay probably are just going to walk out of the breach one day and say, it was all UFOs, man, and they'll be happy with that answer. These three are going to want to know more. Yeah, and that desire to know more, along with their desire to watch out for each other and develop feelings for each other, or get one of them murdered, is quite possibly going to be a big part of what's to come.
Yes. Yes. More to come is what we shall say about
more
that.
To come.
Okay. So
could y'all hear Stella sweating as I kept talking and talking about hot and goss?
Sweaty. A little sweaty about the goss, not gonna lie. All right, next question.
Oh boy, here we go. The real spoiler question.
Yeah, this is what everyone wants to know, of course.
Do you have any hints of what to watch out for or keep in mind from this season when the next season airs?
Translations.
Supercut on the way.
Patreon.
That's all we'll say. We'll leave it at that.
There are things to look out for and keep in mind. Yes.
I think there's a ton of stuff that, we are going to refer to, but if you have the translations almost memorized, very few things will surprise you.
Yeah.
You'll be like, oh man, I knew that.
Yep. Things, the pieces are going to start coming together, shall we say.
And that's not even a big spoiler, because if you know episode 18, you know that Silas has that figured out. Yes. Silas is like, oh, I've read this story.
So yes, those are, I would say translation's key. Key. Okay, so next question we have actually is asked by Galland. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Hopefully.
We can hope.
So they ask, when Alex lets the boys into the armory towards the end, this is episode 18, were they up to something, or was it purely... Oh no, this 18. Was episode 17, right?
I was going to say, I think this is the episode before.
Yeah, so this is the semi-finale. Were they up to something, or was it purely to prepare for their breach? I don't know.
I'm sure it was completely fine, right?
Yeah. It was completely fine.
There's nothing untoward about that.
Just preparing.
Has Chekhov's gun gone off? Do you hear it? I didn't hear anything, so I think we're good.
Who's to say? All right. Next question. Sorry, we can't expound about that more.
Listen, the only thing I'm going to say is we've already said something's fucky. Because if you remember back in episode 12, we already had a moment where somebody was not where they should have been. Something's up with somebody, but who is the question.
Yep. Guess we'll see.
We'll find out. All right, next question. This one asked by Dallas. Are the horror backstories from the first season going to play a part in the series as it continues?
Maybe.
Man, people just be begging for a spoiler, aren't they?
They really do, huh? We'll see. We'll see.
Let me tell you, the actual true answer to the question is... Okay. We'll have to see. I got scared.
I'm holding a gun to his head presently.
I balked. I heard you guys couldn't hear it, but I heard the cock. The breech loading sound, you might say.
We shall see.
Have
Who
we?
knows?
We haven't really had anything directly referenced, right? Anybody's backstory? I don't think so. We
No.
do though. Okay, I know there's more questions coming up like this, but I think
Yes.
one of the funniest things is some of the fascination around the polar bear.
Oh, I'm looking at that
from
question
Alex's
presently,
story.
dude.
We'll talk about it more when we get there, but
Yeah.
it kind of relates to this because it's obviously Alex's horror backstory.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I didn't mention a polar bear in some aspect in the future, I might get murdered in my sleep.
You would die.
So
Yeah, you would die. Absolutely.
if that was just a random polar
There is
bear,
so
people
much
are going to be so
fascination
upset with me.
around polar bear. Okay, so that actually finalizes our plot question category.
All right, it's time to synchronize. You ready? Go on 3. Clap your hands. Are you ready?
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, that was
That
pretty
was really
good.
bad.
Oh, it sounded exactly the same for me.
It didn't sound that way to me, but we can fix it in post.
We can pretend.
Stella,
It's fine.
Stella, cut that out.
No. Oh God, the editor mindset now.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So our next question is gonna be, or our next category rather, is gonna be our questions for our characters or character specific questions. So we do have some that, are for people or for just about characters. So this is kind of the juicy stuff, I would say, right? It's a little bit more juicy.
I was going to say this might be one of my favorite sections. Writing characters is clearly something that we enjoy a lot on the show.
We love
our cryptids. We love our antagonists. We love our external forces. We love our mysterious beings. We love our mysterious language.
Yep.
But at the end of the day,
the heart.
It's all about the beating hearts, the spoken words, the interactions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I'm really excited for these questions too. So once again, we'll kick us off with a few questions asked by Rain again. So the first question we have is, what were the pre-production names for the characters, if any were different? Yes, some of them were different. We spent a lot of time on the character names because we wanted to make sure they were good. Like, we wanted to make sure they were distinct is the best way to put it,
I'm terrible at names, so I want to definitely say it here that Stella was responsible for a lot of the names being chosen. And I'm not saying that to like put blame, but that it's like a skill, because I'm definitely the kind of guy when I DM a D&D game, I go to Fantasy Name Generator, I hit the re-roll button 6 or 7 times, and I look for something that looks like it fits, and I just go with that. Because I feel like names have such power, so I always want to give them something that doesn't just sound good, but has like meaning to it. And the problem is I get so wound up in that thinking that I freeze up, and I'm like, okay, this character's name cannot be Bearer of the Light because they're the good guy. Like it would sound like, it wouldn't even sound like Tolkien-ish, that because Tolkien had of course had some things like that, but it would sound like a space opera or something. It would be like wise master counselor so and so, and I would just get stumbled. And Stella, though, I feel like does an amazing job of making the characters just sound easy to remember, distinct. You're not going to have too many characters with very close sounding names. Everybody's going to have a very specific thing that just feels right. You know, now I could hardly imagine our characters with any other names.
Yeah, I absolutely cannot really imagine anyone with a different name.
But as far as pre-production names,
yes.
Would you like to reveal?
So one of the pre-production names, the one that I remember the most at least, is Cassius was not always Cassius. We went through a few iterations of Cassius names.
Cassius was the hardest one, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
I would say.
Yeah, because we wanted it to sound very androgynous. That's something very important for Cassius's character, I think. And one of the first names that we were going to choose was Rowan. And then Ty,
which is a great name,
convinced me. I honestly forgot why we didn't choose Rowan. There was some reason.
There was a video game that came out right as Syntax was getting started, where there was a specific person, a non-binary person, who was also Rowan.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, we don't want to be too derivative. It's a great game.
This.
If we want to mention the
name,
name,
yeah.
it's a good game.
It's
a game and name.
Boyfriend Dungeon, right?
Yeah, Boyfriend Dungeon.
Yeah,
it's a great game. It does
fun.
great representation, but it was just like, we don't want to be like, yes, this is Khaleesi.
Right. We definitely didn't want to be like,
we didn't want to steal it.
Yeah. So, but clearly I like the name Rowan, and I love the name Cassius. I couldn't, as Ty was saying, I couldn't imagine our characters named as anything else, including Cassius now. But we do have a little tidbit about the Rowan name in Cassius's backstory in the second prologue, which is available on our Ko-fi or Patreon.
True.
But yeah, that's.
I do recall that.
Did we have any other like?
We had a couple of other people in the very, very early stages where before we even knew the actors who were going to be coming in, we had some people that had different backgrounds, but we changed them because we didn't want to have the not correct representation. Because we had some, we tried to put out a casting call, and we tried to get as many different people from different backgrounds as we could.
But this being an unpaid project at first.
Exactly.
We couldn't really pick and choose as much as
we had to just alter some people because we wanted some other representation, like we said, and we just weren't able to get that. So the character kind of altered in order to match that more closely, because we don't want to be the kind of people out here not giving fair chances and things.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the most important things in the AD world right now. So that was like other time, I think. Early
on though. We were still
very, very early when we had just
figuring things out.
Bios. And but other than that, I think everyone was pretty much, I know Silas was Silas from the beginning. I don't think I had another name for him at all.
I think you said Silas before you said Syntax, to be honest.
Oh, yeah. Syntax was not
as
Silas was.
This boy always had the name, and it was just like Silas's Adventure before it was even Syntax.
Yeah. I love a main character, you know.
I don't think so. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
If anybody else's names
I think Jeremiah
dramatically.
Did. Oh, I remember that was also one of those where we changed it just a little bit.
Yeah.
For the representation reason.
Oh, right. In Jeremiah's case, we actually had an actor change at some point. So we did make that alteration because we were able to change the background and make it match more closely. Because like we said, we don't want to be entering anybody else's lane.
Yeah, exactly. So
we stay on ours. Yeah, I think so. Man, I'm really thinking. For some reason, I have it in my head that Vo had a different first name, and we were like, "That's too tame. It needs to be Evelyn."
Yeah, we were going with other. I think we were going with other E names, but then Evelyn just fit her best.
Yeah, good point.
We were like, Evelyn's good. All right, next question, Ty.
Next question: how did you settle on the backgrounds and qualifications for each breacher?
Great question. Silas was always a linguist, and he always will be.
We've already kind of answered that question because we definitely wanted to have a linguist. There has to be somebody expounding on the history, because if there was a different kind of person taking the lead on expounding the plot, it would be filtered through those eyes. And the reason I think you see linguists come up time and time again, especially in written and spoken media, is a linguist will see the story. A linguist is going to translate the words directly and is going to have a feel for the culture and the history along with the language itself in order to try to tell it to a modern audience. And obviously a historian can help out with that too, but with the linguist, you kind of have the direct connection to the words, the ink on the page, and the story being told.
Absolutely.
If it was Cassius kind of leading the exposition, obviously Cassius is another main character, but it's Silas kind of leading us through the what and the why in the background. You'd be getting it from a biological perspective. You would be hearing things like, well, I think that this, this had divergent evolution at this stage of history. And I think and we have a little bit of that in the show, but with the linguistics, and the scientist together, we get something that is trying to sound plausible.
Yes, yes. That was more of the sci-fi hardness thing. Me and Ty
Hmm.
talk about that a lot. I think it's for the rest of them, like Ty was saying, Silas. We definitely wanted it to be a story based more than anything, more than the creatures, more than all of that kind of stuff. We wanted it to be story and language based, cultural
Hmm.
based. Um, Whereas the other breachers kind of came from a need from the sci-fi perspective. Okay,
Hmm.
we know that they're going into this breach, into this other plane, right? How are we going to survive? How are we going to gather information? What do we need for that? Um and I think a lot of them just came kind of in tandem. We know we wanted a biologist pretty quickly because we were like, well, they're going to have all these other creatures that we're encountering. We're going to want someone who has that biological perspective and intellect on what they can gather, what they need for specimens, all that kind of stuff. Cryptozoologist, we kind of what
Hmm.
are you fighting moths?
They're trying to take me away again. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Cryptozoologist, we wanted someone who was a little kooky, not gonna lie. We love Elizabeth and her kind of
Elizabeth was a great
eccentric
addition because it
nature.
immediately tells you from a listener perspective
Hmm.
that something is still off. And
Yeah.
it's like, in the modern world, cryptozoology is a pseudoscience.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
not something that people actually go and study.
Yeah.
And Lizzie even mentions this during her backstory. She's like, I didn't go for cryptozoology. People can't do that. There may be like
Hmm.
hokey universities out there offering, shitty paper degrees that
Hmm.
aren't really a real thing. There is no cryptozoology. But she starts as a zoologist and then she goes down a very different route and essentially calls herself a cryptozoologist. But
Yes.
that is a way to immediately indicate to people that what we're dealing with is going to actually use that specific specialization, because
Right.
there are all these stories and we are going to loop back and reference them, all these cryptids and things. And having her on the force is like, okay, there's a lot of hard sci-fi going on. Sometimes the show is going to sound a little Star Trek-y because, the warp core is going to be stabilized with the plasma field at 3 tachyons or whatever.
Hmm.
But now it's like, okay, and then there's just this entire aspect where we need somebody who can explain something that we have no way to explain with our modern understanding of
Yep.
biology or physics.
We needed someone who did the kind of more out there research as far as the
Hmm.
cryptids and the folklore and stuff like that goes. And we have mentions of that again in Elizabeth's backstory, how she kind of started researching more about folklore and cryptid stories and all that kind of stuff. So
We needed a believer.
we did. We needed a believer.
Cassius
The rest of them are
Cassius
a little
is
skeptic.
Cassius is obviously anti-vincula, but all
Hmm.
not totally sold on the idea of this all being very what am I trying to say? Supernatural. Not
Otherworldly.
right. Clearly it's not of this earth, and
Hmm.
clearly there's a lot of things that are going to defy explanation. But supernatural, I'm not sure. Cassius
Yeah.
is a lot more grounded and skeptical on that side. Lizzie is the one that looks at something and goes, oh, that's a so and so, and that's gonna
Hmm.
look like this, or I'm Lizzie is open. Lizzie is like,
Yes.
I am prepared to accept what is put before me
Hmm.
and not necessarily assume
Try
that
to
this can't
try to
work this
will it
way.
away.
Right. Cassius
Yeah.
is Cassius is also there and seeing it, but is always going to have the brakes pumped a little bit on
Yep.
it and
Yep. They're
try
always going to
to.
be a little bit more like, oh, this has real world connotations. Same
Mhm,
thing with
mhm.
Silas, I believe, but I think Silas's stems more of a fear rather than
Si-
just stubbornness, which is Cassius's realm.
Silas falls in that category of just smart enough to be in danger to himself
Yes.
because he can kind
Yes.
of tell what's going on, but doesn't want to believe it and doesn't want to
Hmm.
be there and would rather leave. Thank you very
Yes.
much.
Thank you very much. And then as far as the rest of the breachers, Alex, we knew that we needed a physicist, mainly because of the different places that the breach was going to go, like the breaches, how they were going to be different oxygen levels, different like planetary
You
gravitational
kind of need somebody who
fields.
just is holding a thermometer sometimes.
Yeah, we need to
it doesn't
know.
sound super glorious, but
It doesn't, but it's very important. We need to know
yeah,
if
you need
we
this.
are able to survive in this place. And that's why on the second area they go to, the Pandemonium, they need suits because Alex.
It's very much Alex's specialty at that
Yes,
point.
it's Alex's specialty where she realizes, oh, this air is not really breathable for long extended periods of time. So we need to have something that can cross this, landscape.
Mhm.
And then of course you kind of need a medic because people are bound to get injured, as we have found out. People are bound to get
Definitely.
injured and ill and all kinds of stuff.
If
So
there is
medic
an
is very important.
adventure story, there is a doctor
There's
on
a
board.
doctor or a medic.
That's one
on
thing
board.
I know. Unless you have some kind of Robinson Crusoe solo story going on, and even that dude had to learn some kind of medical stuff on sterilization.
Yeah.
Because somebody's gonna get bumped or scraped or almost killed, and some of the best characters in every story are the guy that patches you up very begrudgingly.
Yeah. Yes.
And Jay fills that role.
Jay fills it
splendidly,
seamlessly. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And then Greg, there has to be someone who's got a who's got a gun. It's got to be at least one man.
It doesn't make much sense to have a story where there isn't a gun. We talked about how we wanted to not have a reliance on it. And something that I want to mention about Greg, since we have a chance to talk about him here, I like that Greg isn't the kind of guy who is too trigger happy.
Oh, absolutely.
And we try to make a point of that in a lot of the episodes and even going forward. It's like, yeah, the gun is there to protect his team. If it comes down to a battle of survival, right, he's going to pick his team and he's going to be able to say, I'm defending them. But if you notice, even in the moments where he has to do something about it, he's doing it in the, I guess you could say, like, cleanest way possible, most direct. Like when Alex almost gets hauled off by the spider, he's not spraying and praying and just
he gets a knife and takes care of that bad boy.
He goes right in for it. He gets the job done. He puts it away. And that is an aspect that I really like about our breachers, because none of them are going to be too Rambo about it, and neither are they going to be too naive about it.
Yeah.
They're gonna understand that sometimes it is going to be a choice between a creature or some entity that they're encountering down in these breaches, or they're not going to survive. And they've had a couple encounters like that, but it's always taken care of in a manner that I think a older military guy really gives a good appreciation for.
For sure.
He understands the value of life on both sides, and he's not going to try to be too trigger happy about it. All of their backgrounds really play into I think sometimes with the backgrounds, not just the qualifications, because we talked about like why they were chosen for what they were chosen. For sure. Oh, real quick on the qualifications, before I go to the backgrounds, something that may come up that I have heard other people ask about in syntax, why aren't there more like doctors involved? And our reasoning was, I don't think you necessarily put a doctor on the field.
In the field, yeah.
Right. Those guys make too much money to be I'm going to be out there.
Is a army medic. Like
paramedic.
He's there.
Yeah.
He's there for a reason. He's had the experience of like a battlefield situation, right? He knows life or death scenarios.
But as far as like PhDs,
it ain't gonna be out there.
Nah, not gonna like. You'll come back, and a lot of these samples are probably going on to other vincula doctorates and other PhDs, and even medical specialists when they do get hauled back sometimes. But you're just not going to see them out there. So that's why everybody has like master's level. If you look at our intro, a lot of them are like, oh, I'm a master's of biology. I'm this and that. They're highly intelligent people. They're people who can process this information and deliver these things, but they're not like high tiered. A lot of this is going to filter back. And that way it comes to us in a way that feels accessible. Something that I liked to write about with syntax is it's hard sci-fi, but it's not too out there, like Asimov style.
Yeah, it's not too like PhD dissertation level
Right,
stuff.
right. Not too dry. It's being filtered down in a way that still makes it exciting and tangible for people. But then as far as backgrounds, I think all of them, the biggest thing that you need to keep in mind about characters is it's best to write about what you know.
Yes.
A lot of the characters are things that either Stella or I have gone through, or in some characters, it's things that the actors themselves have put into their characters.
We've
because they're like, I feel like this would be this. And yeah, because you write what you know and you act what you know. You want to bring those stories to the foreground too. And you want to, that way it sounds more sincere.
Yes.
I think that's, because very specific example I'll give. Alex is a military brat, totally born and raised while their parents were in the service, and I had the same kind of upbringing. So I was able to like kind of make that sound more real, and it was something that I could write about. It was a very different experience, and it makes for a very different kind of person in the end. And a lot of the characters have similar kind of vibes. I'm not going to say I was a sheltered child like Silas or anything.
There's a lot of us in the Breachers. How about we say that? There's a lot of us. And a lot of our actors as well. They've really made the characters their own.
The DNA of the Breachers is essentially unstranding everybody who works on syntax and splicing them back together in the most Frankenstein ways imaginable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which I think, like Ty was saying, it makes for the best, most realistic people that you can find in characters.
For sure.
So.
And that means that when we make another show, we can splice them in totally different ways, and you get something that's familiar but totally different.
A little different, a little spicy, a little zesty.
We're not going to promise Silas is in every show, but there's probably going to be one nerd that needs to get dunked on.
There's probably going to be a few nerds, who have to get dunked on, because that's a common trait that we feel needs to be provided. Okay, next question. Who is your favorite character? Ty, you go first.
Oh, here, let me.
Oh God.
Who's your favorite character, you say?
Sipping.
Well, it's Silas, obviously. No, definitely not Silas.
Ty does not like Silas very much.
I like.
Choose your words carefully.
I don't hate the lad. I just think that Silas. Maybe what I'll say is maybe he hits too close to home sometimes.
Ooh,
in his.
Okay.
Not even to say that like he sounds smart. It's more the moments when he's especially dumb. When he just doesn't get it. That I'm like, why is this me?
Uh-oh.
I don't like this. But favorite character? I mean, I love them all. I write so much about all of them. So this is like really like
choosing
asking
your
about favorite child.
Yeah, literally.
Right. But if you had to force me to pick, I think the character that I smile the most when they're on screen, so to speak, is Cassius.
Okay. Cassius lover. Get it.
It feels like a monkey wrench in the works. And that's why I like it. Everybody else meshes in different ways. Even Silas and Lizzie, their antagonism makes them predictable. Because you always know when they're together, they're going to be fighting. Cassius is always like, what's going on in their head sometimes? How have they shown up today? Kind of vibe.
Yeah, you're always kind of questioning with them a little bit.
And that makes them more interesting.
Fun. Yes, which is so fun.
What about you?
This is hard. As Ty said, it really is like picking your favorite children. We have put so much into these characters and the show. It's like pretty terrifying to pick one. So whenever I watch a piece of media, I have to admit I'm 100% one of those people who latches onto the protagonist, because all in all, the story's about them, right? Clearly our story is about a whole found family with like different relationships, different backgrounds, and different personalities. I think that's great. I love them all. I love Silas because I love main characters, okay? I really,
How
really
dare
just,
you?
I know, I really just attach
Alex
onto
worked
them.
so hard
I
to get
was
here.
gonna say Alex is like my baby child. I feel Alex in the very pits of my soul because oftentimes things that I say either get put in Alex's dialogue or Cassius's dialogue because
True.
they're both very much me.
Always remember see through Ithacus.
Yeah, see through Ithacus for sure. I love Alex so much. She was
Would you
probably
give Alex
my
honorable
second.
mention?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
good. I would give honorable mention to Greg.
I was gonna say Greg as well, just because
I like his laid backness, you know?
Yeah, and also he's inspired by my father, my
That's
daddy-o. So, you know,
Your father is a Chad.
he is a Chad.
And all the times I've met him.
So he does have a special place in my heart. But honestly, everyone has a special place in my heart. I love Elizabeth's quirkiness. I love Cassius's bravery and sort of like smugness about everything. I love Vo's antagonism and snarky attitude. Like
being able to use my
love
experiences
Jay's
as an
funny.
EMT for Jay. Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I was an EMT and I totally understand the vibe that like this person is here to save you, but they don't have to be happy about it.
But they don't have to be. I love Jay's like sarcasm, attitude, and like just miserable times sometimes. It is amazing.
Puddleglum.
Yeah. Honestly, honest to goodness, it is incredibly hard to pick. But because he is the main of the story, he's where it all started, I would say Silas. I know it's the boring answer, but you know.
He's a dum-dum. You should dunk on him
he
more.
is. I do dunk on him often. He's a dumbass, but I love him. Okay, so next question. Let's go.
Next question. Why does Alex get saved by the polar bear? Gun emoji.
Gun emoji. I had to include that in. Who's to say?
Well, you see, the reasoning for that is...
So in the backstory of Alex, it is not expanded upon why she gets saved by it.
Which is why I'm going to expand upon it now and explain some things in the future.
We'll be doing things later.
Do you guys remember the line where Silas is like, I didn't know I could hear myself sweat? Do you like how you can hear Stella sweating right now? That kind of loops back to, we didn't give an answer, but we kind of mentioned that in the previous segment when we were like, are these backstories going to play in again? We haven't said yet, have we?
Yeah, we haven't said yet.
That
season 1 is early, y'all. Season 1's early.
I was going to say, I'm not going to mention how many seasons we have in mind because, you know, we'll kind of get there when we get there.
Yeah.
But I will just say, I don't think this ends with season 2.
No. I don't think so either. I don't think so either.
We are, as we mentioned in the very first 2 episodes of Syntax, we are but scratching the surface.
Oh,
there is
episode
more.
Drop.
There's more.
Woo!
Well, now I feel terrible. Let's move on.
Okay, this next one is a cute one. What is Alex's favorite video game? I would say, okay, I've actually gathered an answer from Jules, who is the voice actor for Alex. But I would also say that Symbol Forge, because we made that up in canon.
That was a good call by me. I still feel like.
Yeah. Oh, I love that name for in-universe.
I couldn't believe that Gage, your brother and Fred in the story, couldn't figure out what it was a reference to. I guess I thought it was the more popular Real World series that I just found synonyms for.
It's not.
I guess not. It's only the people around me that actually play it, and I'm just like, oh, I guess it was more popular than I thought. And it's like only you 2 or 3 people that know it exists.
So Symbol Forge, as Alex mentions in episode 3, 4, something like that.
I think it's 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah.
Long
time ago. She says Symbol Forge, which is a video game that we made up in universe for Syntax. It's based on the real world game Ruin Factory, which is a spin-off of the Harvest Moon series, which is Ruin Factory is one of my favorite games. So That's what we said for Alex, because I do feel like Alex would play that game, to be fair. She would
I
enjoy
tend to
Rune
agree.
Factory. But
especially since Alex is probably a Switch aficionado.
For sure, absolutely.
Yeah, the video games Alex plays are probably all Nintendo based. I don't see Alex as like an Xbox Live kind of kid or a PlayStation.
So I do have a controversial opinion from Jules. It's not very controversial to the Switch. I think Jules would agree there. But Jules said, and I quote, "I feel she is an avid Final Fantasy 14 player and kicking people's asses in it." And I just have to agree with that. I feel like Alex would play like one of the cat people races. And
that's right. Because when that got mentioned, I was immediately like, oh yeah, Jules's dad probably tried to get Alex to play WoW, and Alex was like, nah. But the MMO part stuck with Alex, and she was like, but this Final Fantasy game, though.
Exactly. Like the MMO, I feel like Alex would definitely be the vibe for
She's the cat person and destroying people.
I totally could see it.
You know that's going to be next, right?
What?
What is everybody's Final Fantasy race and class?
Probably true. Probably.
I don't even know enough. I haven't played it, either. But I haven't either. We'd have to find out. I can tell you their WoW classes.
We both could do that.
Yeah, we could go down the list and be like, all right, here's all the breachers and the supporting characters, WoW races and classes. But absolutely. Alex does seem like a Final Fantasy kid. 100%.
I would say so. Yeah, she's also young. She wasn't, primary WoW age, I don't think.
Yeah, she probably didn't play FF7, but she saw 14 and was like, cat people? Hell yeah.
Gotta love some cat people.
And that's how I wound up at Vincula.
Playing MMOs online.
All right, my turn to ask, I think?
Yes, your turn.
Okay, this is split across the page a little bit. Is this one question or two questions? This is one question.
Yeah, with like some more explaining.
This is asked by Galland.
I think
I'm hoping we're getting the name right again. I feel like trying to learn more about Miss Vo to see if she really was as cold as she appeared was worth them investigating more. I think that was worth investigating more, is what that's trying to say. Was this ever considered in the story? Or if she knew Vincula's true intentions, was possibly a descendant of the noble Kutul ritual folks?
Interesting questions here.
Yeah, but there's a problem.
Yes.
She's dead.
This is true. Well, they did say was.
Oh, that's a good point.
Was.
But I mean, yeah, I guess we can answer the past tense. Was this ever considered in the story?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. Yes, for sure.
It was considered.
It was considered. But there was a direction we wanted to take things. And again, without trying to reveal too much, just speaking in the broadest terms here, there is a problem in horror stories in particular where you can only kill off certain folks at certain times and maintain interest in the story. We kind of pulled, I'm going to use the Star Trek terminology, we kind of pulled our red shirt card kind of early in the story, and we didn't really want to do it again. But are we done with the other characters yet? Not really.
Yes, for sure.
And there are ways of exploring these backgrounds that we can still address without necessarily needing certain vehicles within the story. That's all I'm going to say.
I think that's a good answer, Ty. I say threateningly.
Guns cautiously uncocks.
Good one. Okay, shall we move on from that one?
Certainly.
Okay, so because I have nothing else to add, I think Ty did a good job answering that one.
If we say it anymore, we're in trouble.
Yeah, exactly.
Stay tuned. Stay safe.
Stay sane. We love Call of the Void here, okay?
I've been listening to it. It's what I'm listening to right now. I like it.
Are you listening right now?
No, not like right now. I'm saying that's what I'm currently listening to.
Like how?
It's my multi-track brain. I'm multi-track drifting questions.
Okay, so this next question was asked by Dallas again.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna kind of combine these two because I feel like they go together. Probably not a question that can be answered, but I am super curious about why Alex and Silas seem to be uniquely targeted by certain things in the breach, or at least uniquely affected. Also, the moths seem to play an integral role on Gaia. Will they continue to play an important part of the series? So I combine these two because we're
Y'all be
aware.
fishing, I swear.
Yeah, you really are.
You
I
just want me to
combine
tell
these
you the story or something?
because obviously
I kid,
Alex
I
and
kid.
Silas are both affected by the moths, right? That's one of the largest breach beast encounters that we have that are affecting them.
Most sweeping for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so I can say they will continue to be in the story.
Yeah, I don't. That's the only thing I want to say. I don't want to mention what is going to happen, but I do want to say I don't think we're pulling a Star Trek. I mentioned Star Trek a lot, but it just feels like that adventure style. Yeah, that adventure style is like what people can relate to.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't going to be like touch it one time, move on, never see that entity again. And, you know, sometimes in Trek or Stargate or these other shows that have more of a serialization going on, you do have occasional side characters re-entering the story because they were interesting or folks liked them or there's something about them that they can use. But mostly, you know, we go to the side planet, we see a thing, we leave, and that's the end of it. We don't really want to do that. You will see some things again. And sometimes the interaction is what's important. Sometimes the creature is what's important. And you'll see as we go along.
Yes.
But we don't want to leave too many things to the wayside.
Yeah. So I'm not going to
And I'm going to be bad and say one other thing. You can figure it out if you listen really close.
You can. I was going to say the same. It's okay. I'm not running time
thank goodness I'm not dead.
Yeah, so I would say as to why Alex and Silas seem to be uniquely targeted or affected by things.
It's the tiniest detail. This is the most breadcrummy of breadcrummy.
Yes, but it will be talked about. I can say that.
Yes.
You won't be left hanging by any of our breadcrumbs, I hope.
Most, I'm not even going to say all, most will be revealed by the time we get to the end.
Yes, some things may be ambiguous, but things like this, I would say.
We do like a little bit of, what do you call it? Viewer interpretation.
Yes, such as, you know, character stuff, but yes. Very good. Okay. Next question.
Next question was asked by Deo. How old are all the characters? Silas, Alex, Cassius, etc.
So
I am so glad you asked.
Yes. So
we have a list.
We have a list. We do. Do we want to like say that, or do we just want to be like kind of general? I would
There's
say like
nothing
general.
spoilery about it. I think we could mention. We don't have to do like birthdays, even though we know their birthdays.
Yeah, we do have their birthdays and zodiac signs. Okay.
Should we tell people
about the zodiacs?
Okay, we're like an hour into the Q&A. If you're the kind of person who would listen to us, first of all, we love you. But second of all, you probably deserve this information.
Well, and I have been tweeting the birthdays on Twitter.
True. I don't think this is something we have to keep hidden necessarily.
No. I wouldn't say. So we do. Everyone in the show is, of. Basically, I see you on Alex's biography.
I'm opening all of the bios right now.
Everyone is above legal age, clearly. We're all 20, 30 somethings, even older.
All these people are old.
Yes.
It's not even a question if they're legal or not. All these people are freaking
they're definitely older. We definitely wanted to make we wanted to be realistic, right? You're not going to have a master's degree if you're 20 years old. Like, that's just not how it works. So we wanted
And I don't really like those kind of stories. I mean,
me neither.
You know, teenage slashers are interesting, but this is a bunch of either veterans or they've been on tours or they've gone on trips to things. A lot of these folks are well traveled. It's not a coming of age
story.
Exactly.
It's definitely more of like a mature story in that regard.
They're old and set in their ways.
Right. Like me and Ty are both not around that age. I'm 26. Ty is older than that.
Don't you dare.
I did
You
good,
mad
didn't I?
woman revealing your own age, but don't you dare touch mine.
So we wanted people that we could, like empathize with. That I think
Yeah.
that's really important nowadays because
Man, you really are knocking us down, aren't you? We
what?
don't understand young people. We
No,
didn't want to write about. We
it's
were never
just
18.
listen. I don't hear stories often that are about our age group. Is all I'm saying. It's
That's actually a good
always
point.
young people, and it's like I want more of like our middle.
There's a
Middle
ton
of
of
the
teenage
road.
stories. There's a ton of YA dystopian
Adolescents.
stories. There's a ton of.
Yeah.
Most of these folks have got their lives figured out, and they're trying to.
Plus, it's a
help
mature.
others
It's
figure stuff.
mature
Yeah.
content. It's
I think so.
there's death, there's injury, there's horror, there's romance,
Existential crisis. That what?
Nothing.
There's what?
Nothing.
I didn't know about this. Well, okay. So, do you want to tell people?
About
I don't
what?
mind. Age.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We can say.
I didn't know if you
specifically.
wanted to be specific or not. Okay.
No, we can. I don't have a problem with that. Really.
All right. Go for it. You start with
So,
Alex.
Okay, first on the roster, Alex Yard is our youngest of the cast, of the characters. She is a mere 24 years old. She is baby girl, and her birthday is March 25th, so she's an Aries. Love that for her.
Next up, not necessarily in age, but just I think I'm going alphabetical.
These
so
are alphabetical, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Cassius is 28 and is a December 7th baby.
So what's her zodiac?
Sagittarius.
Sagittarius. Woo! Sorry, I feel like that one's very fitting for Cassius.
For sure.
Then we have Elizabeth next in the what's that word?
Alphabetical.
Oh. Alphabetical order.
I was like, she can't mean alphabetical. Sure.
It is. So, Elizabeth is 27, a year younger than Cassius, and she is a Leo. So her birthday is August 8th. Which is the closest to my birthday. Yay.
Okay, I actually have a question.
Go ahead.
I think we've altered Greg a bit.
Have we?
I think so. I don't think he's in canon this age anymore. That we have on the bio.
Yeah. No, I think he's probably... Let me change it really quick.
Sure,
you think that's good?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what... I think we mentioned it. Okay, we at least have like a ballpark.
Yeah.
Anyway, Greg is... We'll give Greg the benefit of the doubt and say he's in his late 40s and is aging gracefully.
He is aging very gracefully.
He's already served his time. He was a long-term soldier back in the day, and he just was one of those guys that when he got out kept kind of doing the same thing, protecting his squad. But his birthday is on May 16th, and he is a Taurus.
Then we have Jeremiah, or Jay, who is the medic, as we know. Jeremiah is 31, first of our 30 group. And he is a Libra, so he was born on September 29th. Woo!
And then Mama June does not permit people to know her age.
Indeed.
So no one dares ask. But her birthday is on March 9th, and she is a Pisces.
Love for her. So cute. Okay, for Vo, she seems to be around 35. No one really knows for sure.
Another one of the we dare not ask group.
Yeah,
but
for a
that
different
seems to be the ballpark.
Yeah, for a different reason.
For Mama June, it's out of respect. For Miss Vo, fear. We'll keep the people in line.
Her birthday is on November 17th, and she is a Scorpio, which makes a lot of sense, I think.
Oh boy. And then trundling in at the back of the squad is your boy, Silas Caldwell. He is a rounded out age of 30, and he was born on September 10th, which makes him a Virgo.
Very accurate, I think. Very accurate. For some reason, I have not looked at their ages, their actual canon ages in a while. And I was thinking they were all a little older than that, so they're doing good for themselves.
No. You know, we like we said, we wanted to go in our range. So we were like late 20s, early 30s, with
Early
some
30s, yeah.
outliers that were like Greg and June seem to lead the pack, but it just helps them give that mama and papa vibe.
Yeah, mama, papa bear.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. That was a fun question. I like those kind of questions a lot.
I do like that question.
Very good. Very good. Okay, so now that we have revealed canon information to you, we can go to the next category, which most of these questions are going to be for Ty. This is the writing questions category, which I'm very excited about. I love Ty's writing, and I think he's done a amazing job on syntax thus far. So, really excited for these.
Flattery will get you everywhere.
So our first question is actually asked by Rex, who's one of our friends.
Woo!
Woo! So Rex asks, some of the monsters seem to have direct inspiration, but some felt very unique. What were your real world inspirations behind the designs of the monsters? Which we
Very
kind
good
of
question.
talked about a little bit, but if you'd like to expand on it.
Yeah, obviously you always run into this kind of thing where there's nothing new under the sun, right? Everything's kind of been done, but the real issue is whether it's been done precisely in that way. We already mentioned that we had some direct connection to some things. Chameleon Apes is our Bigfoot analog. But I think when we were making the cryptids, we really delved deep into how do we twist it? How do we twist it? How do we twist it more? How do we twist it again? How do we twist? And it sounds odd, but it's like, I think if you twist hard enough, you end up at a place where you have made something unique because you had something in mind, but now you've successfully pushed it far enough along a certain aspect of the thing that it feels like something different.
Yep.
Like, I think a good example is the acid Nessie. So we said Loch Ness Monster. The thing with Loch Ness Monster is the only thing people know about it is it probably had a long neck. It may have been a plesiosaur. It's probably a hoax. But what does it do? It just kind of sits there in the water and nobody has any idea of what it does. There's probably a ton of Loch Ness horror stories out there, but it's like everybody's going to put their own thing on it. With us, I was like, you know, when one of the best parts of doing syntax was like in the early stages when we were like, okay, let's sit down and like write a couple things and be like, okay, we want to see this in this spot and we want to make it sound crazy and give it enough difference that it's like, okay, this is now a syntax monster with inspired by on it, but something totally different. And Stella was really good about being like, okay, here's what I think about, but here's something else that I'm like, what if it could live there? What if it could do this? And with Acid Nessie, we had both heard stories of like the volcanic calderas that are left behind when volcanoes go up sometimes, and it leaves behind like these really acidic pools that are unsafe to go in, but they look gorgeous. And it's like, okay. And then I had heard stories about creatures that could actually live in volcanoes. The what are they called? I think they're called like iron worms or something like that. It's a creature whose shell is actually made of iron, and it allows them to live in those temperatures. And it's like, okay, so we've got a couple of things here that's like, all right, we take the idea of a Nessie, but we apply it to this acid lake and this gorgeous spot. And then we're able to, you know, it's just extrapolating it from there, because you look at the base cryptid or you look at the base inspiration and you just start thinking, okay, what do I think about? What are some of the things that it could do, or why doesn't it live there? And okay, I'll just come up with a reason why it lives there. And we kept doing that over and over and over with every critter. We kept being like, okay, if I was, wait, what's his name? Richard Atkinson, right?
Yeah.
If I were narrating Planet Earth, and I was showing you something that sounded plausible, but in the back of your mind, you're going, there's no way that's a real thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
These guys are like just animatronic experts, and they made this bug do this thing, or they made this penguin walk 1,000 miles on the Antarctic coast. Those shows,
David
those old
Attenborough.
David Attenborough. Richard Attenborough is a different person, I think.
Richard Atkinson. I was like, that doesn't sound
Atkinson.
right.
I was way off base. Whoops.
We love
do you
you,
look
David,
at those
if
old?
You're listening.
I grew up with a lot of those like Planet Earth and Animal Planet and a lot of those kind of TV shows and things. And some of the critters, it does make you think, that just almost doesn't sound real.
Mm-hmm.
It has the same vibe as a cryptid, but
There's
somebody
a
actually
lot
went and
of
filmed
real
it.
life, like insects and fungus and stuff like that you would just be like, what?
Yeah, and with syntax, I wanted it to sound like that. We both sat down and were like, okay, when you see this creature, you know it's fake. But you're coming at it from the other way, and you're hearing all the reasons it can work in that environment. And you're like, okay, all right.
Is this real?
The xenobiology part is like working, kind of. I sort of appreciate. And obviously, we can't make it work in every aspect. You know, there's always going to be somebody that's like, well, okay, there's a reason for this and that. And that's okay. But as far as we could do, as far as we were able to, we were like, all right, let's try to make this sound plausible. And then make that meet up with the critter that we had in mind.
Absolutely. I think that's a great answer. I'm gonna like hand these over mostly to you. I'm gonna ask them for you because, like I said, writing questions.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, very good. I love talking about the actual, comeuppance of the creatures and in the story and everything. Yeah. So, like Ty said, we basically sat down and we were like, what are some fucked up animals that we can some of that is definitely how it went, or some of it was, you know what I thought of the other day in my nightmares. Okay,
there's a lot of dream creatures in here, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of dream creatures. Yes,
we would just have a dream and we'd be like,
we have some
put that
crazy dreams that are very influential in this. Okay, so these next few questions are asked by Rain again. What were some of the reasons you picked the real world animal inspirations you did? Example being the anglerfish in the swamp. So I think kind of the same reason that we just said, right?
Yeah, I think the answer to that is probably going to be very similar to the other one. I definitely wanted some of the creatures to have that aspect of it's familiar, but it's still a mystery. There's something about it, even if I fully understand it, that is strange and wonderful and weird and horrifying. Even if I know that, even if it's a real thing, like anglerfish, like there's something haunting about that. It comes up in so much media that you have that image of something bright and shiny being dangled in front of a gaping toothy maw. Like that's such a powerful image, and you just want to reference it because people are going to understand that, and people are going to have an expectation about it, or it's going to be like something that they can look at and be like, okay, I'm getting the vibe they're putting out here, but it's done with a different spin, twisted until it's something new.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
As far as reason, though, I think some real world animals just kind of have a haunting aspect to them. Like anglerfish is definitely one of those, but even some of the other critters, like the gem crabs in Pandemonium, they evoke something like that, where the little ones are in a way beautiful. Like they are extremely hardy. They have this jeweled, crusted appearance. And then you have that aspect where crabs just like kind of keep growing. And because there's not a lot else going on in Pandemonium that the breachers know about, they keep going and keep going and keep going. And we had the giant one go by at one point.
The evolutionary thing, carnification.
I think it's crucifixion.
That is not
I don't think it's carcinization. Is it
something
carcinization?
like that? It might be that.
I thought that was like related to cancer. It's something. So people are gonna know because it's become a meme at this point. Everything evolves into a crab.
Yes.
It
is carnification.
Carnification?
Oh no, that's flush. Anyway, regardless, we know what we're talking about.
People are gonna be like, yeah, I gotcha. Things turn into crabs. So it's like, okay, what does that mean for the sphere?
Mm-hmm.
The questions that you might end up asking yourself in the background with what kind of creature we chose in the first place might end up haunting you more in a way.
Yes.
In my mind, that kind of makes it a little more what am I trying to, it's not quite cosmic horror because we're not like going for a Bloodborne vibe, but it's existential horror. That's the good word. It's existential horror. It's like, why is it like that at this stage? What process in evolution are we on? Where are we at biologically? Why does it do what it does?
Yep.
And those questions haunt normal real world animals and biologists here on Earth that we're just like, why is it thus?
Why is it like this?
How did it come to this?
Great answers, yay. Okay, great. Next question we have, what were some of the tropes or cliches that you knew you wanted to avoid?
This one I want Stella to answer.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, I can answer this one.
Thank you.
So there's definitely a few cliches that are prominent in horror that I don't think should be. A few of those, and it's not even from, I mean, I guess it is from a writing perspective, but also from a production perspective. We always want to, like, we don't want necessarily very real problems to come up. Like, we want to avoid any kind of sexual connotation being negative. We want to avoid any kind of abuse as far as like drug paraphernalia or anything like that. Mental illness, if it's like, explicit or anything like that. Just bringing a lot of real issues that people have in a derogatory or negative sense. I don't think it's good for anyone. A lot of people,
creatures might end up with things like PTSD from the things that they go through, but it's always going to be treated in like a talk to your professionals kind of manner.
Exactly.
We're not going to be like memeing on it or anything.
No, we definitely don't want to have that perspective where like we're making fun of things or we're taking things lightly or anything. The things that are happening in Syntax are traumatizing. Like, they are gonna be changed people after this. And that would be real with anyone in real life. And also with a lot of things that are in fiction, people are trying to escape the real world. So I don't want to bring a lot of the real world into the kind of productions that we want to do. They're, fantastical pieces, and I want them to stay that way. So
they're a little more escapey.
Yes, for sure.
You're watching the traumas develop, and you're having fun doing it rather than trying to go home with homework at the emotional homework that you have to sort out.
We don't want
it
to take an emotional toll unless it's I'm sad for this character because this thing happened or something like that. We don't want it to take a real heaviness to you, real burden or anything like that.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
That's not the trope or cliche that I thought you were going to address.
What were you thinking?
That is very prevalent. You notice that a lot of horror stories do the Silent Hill thing where it's like all in your head or you're trying to put your traumas together. I thought you were going to talk about the A word.
A word.
Aliens.
Oh, okay. Yes. Let's talk about this for a moment.
I do. Yes, that was what I thought you were going to talk about.
I will talk about this briefly, okay? There's a reason why it took a long time for me to accept that Syntax was a sci-fi horror, okay?
Stella did not want to use the word sci-fi anywhere near the story.
Want to use the word sci-fi or alien or anything like that because everything that I've attributed to sci-fi or alien has been little green men. Not scary, gimmicky, boring, frankly, and not entertaining. And I don't want to be that way. So or
maybe even more of an action story, because we like to say Syntax is an adventure, but we don't really think of Syntax as like action, like boom pow. It's not like that. It's not like a spy novel, even though
Yeah.
Alex thinks it is.
Yes, she does.
It's a lot more adventure where like stuff is happening, but there's an overarching plot that's carrying it forward. It's not Transformers or Avengers or something like that, where it's lots of,
Yeah.
you know, biff pow
Punching
carried on
or
the
anything like
action
that.
sequences.
Shooting.
And in your mind, Aliens and sci-fi in particular was action, not adventure.
Yes.
Or even horror.
It's more like it definitely wasn't horror at all. It was more like comical, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing I wanted to avoid. I don't want this to be a comedy unless it's between the characters interacting, you know, and they're like
funny moments.
having a good joke or something, you know.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I did think it was funny though, because the thing is that over time you got to a point where you saw other media and you saw other people reacting to Syntax and calling it sci-fi and saying that it had these elements, and noticed like the distinct lack of saying things like the A word, the alien word.
Yes.
Because we were trying to avoid saying things like extraterrestrial or little green men or things like that because of that vibe that you had. But to Stella's credit, you know, you came around and you were like, you know, okay, it can be scary and it can be more grounded, where it's less like, you know, we say Star Trek all the time, but in Star Trek, it's always like alien means it's thinking, or it's going to be antagonistic, or it's going to be highly advanced. You know, it has all these cliches. And then with ours, it's like, okay, we mean extraterrestrial, but it's like sometimes it's bacteria in a pond, and sometimes it's a thunderbird, and sometimes it's a gem crab. And it's very natural stuff. And possibly down the line, maybe sentience will be involved, but it's going to have a very different vibe to it. Everything is a lot more grounded than when you just hear the word aliens off the top of your head and you're, like you said, you're thinking little green men. But you've seen that and you've been like, okay, we can kind of embrace that more, the sci-fi aspect more, because we're going to have a crew of scientists, so this is going to be a science fiction.
I realized that, yes, I am actually a science nerd, and that's part of the reason why I wanted it to be this way. So, yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Okay, so next question. Opposite of that, what were some of the tropes or cliches you wanted to embrace? Found family, hurt comfort. Sorry,
it's funny
I had to get
that we
in there.
immediately diverged from like the horror aspect that it could be, but the trope we want to embrace isn't a horror trope, it's the character trope.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be. I obviously we want to spook you and we want to have lots of creatures and stuff like that, but Syntax has been described in the Discord server as a romance novel disguised cleverly as a horror book.
Yes,
but
correct.
It's like we wanted you to have you coming to this horror story, and hi Tara.
Me moving her off my desk while muted.
I just saw a bunch of text start typing across the screen on the question list. We wanted people who were looking for a form of escape, because we mentioned we didn't want you to come here and like have to address a problem or deal with something. Syntax is kind of light in that sense, because you're coming here to be entertained. You're coming here to be spooked. You're coming here to have chills and thrills and things like that. So the tropes and cliches we want to embrace are the ones that feel comfortable around the characters in particular. So like Stella said, things where somebody's hurt and somebody's rescuing them, somebody's being strong and brave and climbing a tree to rescue somebody, somebody's getting pulled out of, somebody sounds like they're exploding, all these things are going on, and it's just like, you know, there are moments where you're like, okay, there's no way they should have survived that, or there's no way that should have occurred, or things like that. And we want to try to keep it as real as possible, but at the same time, most people are probably here to listen to the found family.
Right.
Most people want to hear this group of people who came here, and maybe they still like their family, or maybe they're a little detached, whatever stage all of them are at. This is now their unit. They have to stick together. This is Breachers for life. And whatever happens down the line, they have to try to make that work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're absolutely embracing that because, you know, there's nothing wrong with a story where everybody is serving their own ends. You know, there's a way to make a more cutthroat world work. But in this one, these little brothers and sisters and mamas and papas and all parts in between are just gonna try to stick it out for each other.
Yeah. Very important tropes.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Slash
as far as
cliches.
horror trope or cliche, not just talking about the characters, I think, like we said earlier, I think one of our favorite ones is the cliffhanger.
Oh yeah, for sure. For sure. Obviously we have a ton of cliffhanger hangers, and that's something we enjoy doing. Keeping
Extremely.
The edge of your seats kind of aspect, for sure.
It's a big cliche, but it's one that I think works tremendously well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You always want to leave people guessing about where they're going to pop into the next one, because I think some people try to front load episodes sometimes, make it sound interesting in the beginning. I like to have like a big finale.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like it to feel like a slow build up to the thing that's gonna make you wish it was Thursday again.
Yep. Exactly. Definitely keep them wanting as it goes.
Keep them yearning.
Oh God, I got a little coffee.
I heard that.
Okay. Next question we have again. Do you have a favorite line or segment that you wrote?
Hell yeah.
Okay. Go ahead, Ty.
Every single word that comes out of my keyboard is my favorite ever. No. I mean, obviously you want to back your own work, but there are moments where I have screen captured something that I've written and sent it to Stella and be like, this is really good, right? This is perfect, right? This is I was really clever once here, right? But if I had to think specifically right now, because the problem is I'm kind of like in the midst of doing season 2 stuff, so
yeah, you can't say too much. Season 2.
Yeah, I don't want to use the season 2. I want to think of like a so far a season 1 line, but it's hard because I have the brain of a goldfish and I've already forgotten all of season 1 and won't be able to reference anything ever again. What? Trying to think of like one line.
I can tell you my favorite line.
Go ahead. It might help jumpstart me.
You know, the in episode 9, of course, because episode 9 is Stella's favorite episode, as we all know. When Silas is monologuing in the first part, and he talks about reaching up, the mountains reaching up to the heavens in supplication. You remember?
Yes. The fingers of the giant.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Every time I read that line for like the first, I would say probably until it actually, I listened to it after it was uploaded, it made me cry every time. I don't know why, but it really hit something, hit the finality that Silas really thought it was going to be the end. So
I remember you mentioning that because I was like, what do people always do when they're right on the edge?
I got it. Yeah. I got the exact line because it's so beautiful to me. Okay, so as I said, Silas is in the moth nest in episode 9 doing his death monologue, basically.
His
so
dirge.
He says, yeah, right. He says, even here I can see the mountaintops sweeping up near the nest. They look like a giant's fingers reaching to the heavens in supplication, begging for one more day, just one more day. And that was always like, oh my goodness, it really gets my heart running, you know?
Huh. That's right. You did mention that.
That's my favorite line. It's my favorite line.
You know, I think I'm going to go with a funny.
A funny.
Because mine
was too serious, guys.
No. It's the one that sticks out to me because I always think of the witticisms instead of like specific dramatic lines. I'm always thinking of the moments where somebody's like just being. Okay. Some of the Alex naming sessions
Oh my
I
gosh,
feel
they're
like
so
was some of the
funny.
most brilliant fiction ever written. Very, very egotistically, I'm like, cherry tomato, that was incredible, wasn't it?
Oh my
But
gosh.
one of my other favorites, the whole conversation in episode 12 between Cassius and Silas in the linguistics office is great. Love that. But I always
Yes.
think of the one from 18 when Cassius and Silas are in the archival lab
Oh yes.
and Silas goes,
Monologuing.
if you can develop a taste for my, or if you can pick up a sense of, what does he say? Oh gosh, see, I like the line, but
Oh
I can't remember it off the top of my
no.
head.
I remember
I know it's
cynical
cynical
impropriety.
impropriety. Yep. And
Oh,
then
it's
it's
something like nihilistic camaraderie. That's what it is.
yes, nihilistic camaraderie. That one was good because it sounds so Silas.
It sounds so Silas. He's using all the big
And
words
then
he can muster in that
Cassius is
moment.
just like, who you calling proper, Buster?
Who you call him proper?
Keep your nouns
Never
off me.
you. So funny. I do love that line a lot. That was a great line for 18. Perfect.
Love
Okay,
it.
really good. Okay, this is a question for you, kind of, because you didn't really talk about it too much. Do you have any specific inspirations for syntax from other ADs or media?
At the time of writing syntax, the only AD I had listened to was I was in progress for Magnus Archive, which I've since finished. I'm starting to digest other ADs, but I would definitely say I was always more of a bookish kid. Big surprise.
Big surprise, the man who plays Silas was a bookish kid.
Exactly. So it definitely probably drew more from that because I was never, I still am not really a big TV watcher. I mean, I'm obviously aware of tropes from like Star Trek and things like that, but I don't think I've even watched much Star Trek. I usually get dragged along by my wife, who's like, I'm going to watch Voyager for the third time, and you have to see it with me. But for me, I always either watched bigger movies, like obvious, Lord of the Rings has got to be way up there on the list. We love a fellowship.
Yes.
We love a group of people that have got some kind of quest and they've got to watch each other's back. Other books or movies, though, I had mentioned that I always liked a good adventure, something in the veins of like Treasure Island. I mean, even Treasure Planet is such a great movie. Love that one. Love all the characters in that one, and the very different kind of story that it was trying to tell. Obviously, taking root in Treasure Island, but giving it such a neat spin and a completely different world with unfamiliar technology and biology going on. But other things, I would say for syntax, I've always loved monster stories where the monster is never very clear.
Yes.
So less Frankenstein or Dracula. Great stories, but for syntax, it was always a bit more man, I'm trying to think like off the top. I'm terrible at trying to like recollect specific things when it comes down to it.
It's okay.
Something where the monster is just like, it's not necessarily in the title card. It's something that's going to come to get you later. I would even say something like Dune was kind of inspiring because it's not right in the title, but once you read it, the imagery of the sandworm and things like it and how it influences the people in it are such a key point of the story, right? It's so terrifying and it's so incontrovertible. It's something you can't change, or if you tried to, it would take thousands of years to try to enact some scheme upon it.
Yeah.
But you just have this creature that just is. You can't explain it necessarily, but you have to deal with it. It's a fact of life. And with syntax, it's like, okay, we get to have these breaches and we get to have these creatures in it that maybe you can't fully explain it and maybe you don't want to, but it's here and we got to do something about it.
Yep.
And in the meantime, there's a lot of stuff going on in the background where we're leaving the breadcrumb trail to lead you to some kind of confrontation or a finale where it all has to come together and the story has to conclude satisfactory. And I'm hoping with Syntax that we can pull that off. I'm hoping we can give you a really satisfying, crunchy story that is like a full package.
Delicious bread.
Yeah, you'll have some mysteries, but along the way, some of the more mysterious aspects are going to get delved upon. And you're going to be able to be like, oh, I see. Like, yeah, so that's a good way to bring Dune into it, because like with Dune, it was very political, like, yes. Emperors and princes and margraves and all kinds of things going on. With Syntax, it's a lot more like personal level. It's going to be Breachers and Vincula and the critters inside and the authors of this book and who all is playing in this part and what is going on precisely. And we're very slowly measuring it out. But the part that's satisfying to know is that the whole thing is in your hand.
Yes.
Like I've got it. I know what I'm trying to tell you guys, but I'm giving it little one piece at a time, and you're going to have a whole piece of toast at the end. But right now, breadcrumbs.
Very, very agreed. I think that's a good point. I love a unidentified monster as well for a while.
Something lurking in the corner that's only going to come out later.
Exactly. Great. Okay. Next question. I like this question as well. Did you have any qualms about writing in character death? Ty, did you have any qualms? I would.
Miss Bo, no. Killed her ass.
Miss Bo, no. Fuck that bitch.
It's funny too, because I don't think, obviously we didn't write her as like a sympathetic character, but I didn't really hate her, but it was kind of satisfying. Kai, if you're reading this, don't read sorry. It. We're sorry. Yeah. It's not read into it. We're sorry. We did that to you, but it kind of felt good. You like a villain that gets curb stomped sometimes.
Sometimes
but
you need it.
You know what? I do think I did. I do think I had one.
Oh.
I didn't necessarily want to kill Fred off.
Yeah, I remember I had to be the final say on that.
Yeah, I was like,
all right, it's time.
It's really up to you, but I'm kind of, like we said earlier, he was a red shirt. You have a trope and, you're going to use it. You're able to give that little emotional punch to the story without being hyper invested in the character or anything and tear people up.
Fred was serious now.
I liked Fred being a little goofy in the background, starting with the prologue.
Fred
that
was
far
fun
back.
To have.
He's just like, here, kitty, that kind of thing. Kind of a grunt vibe, like a what's his name, Igor Frankenstein, just kind of dim-witted, but he's going along with it. And then Stella was like, he must go.
It's time.
I was like, all right, goodbye, Fred.
I was thinking that one more than Bo, for sure, for you, I think. Bo was definitely more satisfying, I would say.
But I feel a lot worse about the ones that are coming out.
Sorry, guys. I wondered if you were going to hint at anything.
I wanted to be a jackass and be like, oh, but these other ones, oh.
Anyways.
If you're Rain, I'm so sorry about that feeling, your heart dropping in your stomach, but it must be done.
Get used to it.
Put your bets in now. Who's it gonna be?
All right, next question. Did you have any sections that were particularly difficult to write or sections that suffered from heavy writer's block? So it's interesting, I think.
I remember trying to say it was somewhere in like the 13-14 area.
I do remember that was a little bit of a difficult section.
Getting into Pandemonium was hard to write about because we have this delicate balancing act between I want to write a science fiction and you're saying science or you're saying fiction.
Yeah.
I could sit here and chat all day about all the crazy stuff that I think happens in Pandemonium or any of the breaches, really, right? But it does come to a point where for any average listener, it's too much. Or really, another aspect is it's not gonna matter. You don't want to put all the details in because there's not really a way to tell the story without 300, 400 episodes later making all those details even matter to the plot. You're kind of trying to address the things that are gonna be significant and still keep it interesting. So getting into Pandemonium, I remember being really difficult because I wanted to describe how they couldn't do the electronics. They had to have the suits, but it's not like a full body isolation suit. It's not like they're getting into an astronaut gear. They just needed supplemental oxygen and like a filter, things like that. And that ended up being pretty difficult because I had to do a lot of like side research because I had an idea of how hazmat worked from previous life experiences, but didn't want to stumble over it too much and didn't want to get into it too much. But I had to still get us there. So it was like, I remember finishing 12 because 12 is a pretty fluffy episode. I remember 12 really fondly. And then unlucky number 13 comes up and it's like, okay, now you have to describe the whole process of getting to Pandemonium and starting it in a way that sounds scientifically fun, but also fictional enough that it's like, okay, we're here now. We got there, you know, because you can always snap your fingers and show people there. But I like to give enough backdrop to it that it's like, okay, this is a group of scientists that are really trying their best and actually preparing for it. But it's a bit of a tightrope act.
Indeed. Yeah, I do remember that being a little bit of a strenuous task, but definitely got there. I enjoyed those episodes a lot. From a editing perspective. I had fun with them. Okay, great. So those are all the questions from Rain for the writing questions. Next we have one from Galland again. So this is kind of a question that we may not be able to expand upon. Word by word. What happened with the hazy dissociation happening between the team and possible doppelganger among them, which seemed to ebb around them finding the second breach?
It's a really good question.
It's a great question.
I will say we left a tiny breadcrumb of that because when we looked back at it you know what? I think that takes place in 13, doesn't it, as well? Because we kind of had to go back and be like,
it does.
Come back to it. When they have their conversation, them being Silas, Cassius, and Greg in particular, they're discussing some of the things that took place in the several days prior. And Greg seems to be pretty hazy about it too.
Yes.
And I think that helps explain some things because it's like, sometimes it's easy to look at characters and say that this is like word of God coming from every character. But there is an aspect of some of these characters are walking all day. And if you're like hiking all the time for your job and going through a lot of near-death experiences, sometimes your recollection might not be perfect.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes you might get some details wrong and sometimes that might snag things up along the way. But at the same time, do we need to trust those words? And is this something that was a little too obvious that we really should be worried about it? But is it bad enough that you would be worried about it? When you're looking at it from a listener perspective, sometimes these details, because you know they're obvious, they stick out to you. But I really try to place emphasis on I'm listening to a much bigger story going on around these characters, and this detail at this time didn't stick out to them. But maybe it's significant later.
Yes, indeed.
And as you mentioned, finding the second breach was big enough news that, you know, probably a little oopsie might have gotten swept under the rug just a bit.
Something might have fallen through the cracks.
But perhaps it's something to keep an eye on for later.
Everything has a purpose.
I like to think so. Syntax is going to be one of those that I hope bites a lot of people in the ass.
No offense to y'all. Good luck. Alrighty, so these next two are from Dallas. How long... I'm going to ask these in tandem because, first of all, these are very funny to me, and also they kind of relate to each other. How long does it take Ty to come up with Silas's lines? And how often does he have to look for a bigger word to replace what he already has written down because it's Silas?
The 12-cent words are so important to Silas.
Indeed, he loves the larger
Not
the,
to
the
tootle my own
vocab.
horn or anything, but I don't have to crack open a thesaurus too many times
This
for
is
Silas.
true, and it enrages me every day because
It enrages our whole cast.
Yes, because not only do I, as a director, have to figure out how to pronounce said word, but the cast is like, what does this mean? Because Silas do be coming up with definitely some thesaurus pieces out here for sure.
It's not like I'm trying to be like, yeah, he's a total encyclopedia, but a lot of folks in the cast say I have like boomer dialogue naturally.
Yes,
and
this
I
is
think
true.
it's just like a result of the upbringing that I had, where like my mom was like, "You're gonna have classical education, and you're gonna get it drilled into your head whether you like it or not." And now I have the lexicon of somebody from the 1960s or 70s.
Yeah, this helps us, honestly.
It makes Silas sound very believable, but honestly, the Silas dialogue is easy. The Cassius dialogue is hard, because what I have to do for Cassius is go back and make them sound less verbose, because I end up writing the dialogue and I have to go back and be like, okay, Cassius isn't stupid, but Cassius doesn't. Cassius used few word where few word were good.
Why use many word when few word were good? Those are the times when I have to be like, okay, Ty, this sounds like Silas. I need you to make it sound like Cassius.
Stella said those exact words. Exact words. You have to make this sound more Cassius, because Cassius is sounding like Silas. Because I'm getting the Silas groove.
Yep.
And then Cassius will be like, "Wherefore they're communicating, art thou considering?"
Yeah, they're oftentimes communicating together. So it's really easy when you go to the next piece of dialogue, if it's Cassius, to kind of be like, oh, it's the same type of speech, but
yeah,
certainly not.
And the thing is, Cassius gets it a lot of times. We don't want to put across the vibe that Cassius doesn't understand.
Yeah,
they're
intelligent. They're intelligent for sure.
They are actively making fun of the overwrought performance that Silas is bringing, but still choosing to use those smaller words because, it's just Cassius' style. You're not going to have somebody talking like that. It's a totally different vibe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I have to crack open a thesaurus now and again, but it's like, I gotta bring it down. I'm already out here with the what did I say the other day?
Oh,
something about it was totally, it meant face palming, but I used something. Oh, browbeating.
Oh my gosh! And I was like, what? Literally, some of the stuff he says I've never heard in my adult life ever. I am horrified by this man's vocabulary at some points. Silas is, in terms of vocabulary, Silas is an extension of Ty. How about that?
I read too many old books. I'm sorry.
He'd be out here with Wuthering Heights on his desk.
I came out in the real world and I was like, you guys have color TV? This is a thing now? You guys don't have black and white anymore?
I was about to
watch Gene Kelly or some Fred Astaire. I was gonna watch some older movies. I was gonna be out here with some Greta Garbo going on, and y'all got some newer things going on.
Avengers, what's that? Oh, very good. So that wraps up our writing questions category. Yay! Now we move on.
Well, see y'all later. I'm checking out.
Now we move on to my category. Yeah.
That means I need to ask these.
Okay.
I get to have a little fun.
I'm excited.
These questions following were asked by Rain and pertain, like you said, to the editing of the show. First off, we have, what pushed you to develop a horror podcast over any other genre? And this especially pertains to Stella, because I will always point out that while I write the show, Stella edits, but also I would always tell people Stella created the show. The whole premise started with a Stella idea. I just expounded on it. So why a horror podcast?
So I love horror. I think it is extremely entertaining. It can be from so many different viewpoints, and it's also like one of the most creative fields. And I've heard from a few other podcasters that horror along with comedy is like those are the most difficult genres to make believable, because you have so many horror media that's like not great, like B tier, right? We're thinking about like old bad horror movies, B tier movies, even like some books or whatnot that are just they're horror, quote unquote, but it's mostly, you know, slashing people's faces open or something like that. I think horror is a great place to push yourself and push the human mind into what terrifies you. I love exploring human nature through the viewpoint of horror. I think it's extremely interesting, and I think there's so many like ways to do it. And that's the number one reason. Also, horror scary and sound cool. But I think I really love, and I also love how it pushes characters together oftentimes, or apart, honestly, if they have some sort of, you know, friction between whatever force they're dealing with or whatever environment they've been placed in the horror genre. It almost always pushes them together, pushes certain characters that make the same decisions or have the same ideology together, or it can create those fissures between other characters who might not get along and might have selfish attitudes or, you know, different perspectives. So it's a really interesting genre to explore, I think.
Good point. Good point. It's really sad now that you mention it about the splitting apart thing, because, you know, we had a lot going on with Silas, but now that he's gone, it's going to be really difficult to continue developing the story in that aspect now that they've been driven apart.
Truly. There's going to be a lot of friction for sure. We can say that.
Indeed. Yeah. That's gonna bode poorly for the love triangle question mentioned earlier.
Yeah, that is factual.
All right, great answer. And I mean, just to chip in just a touch, I was fully on board with the project as presented, because horror is, like Stella said, such an interesting way to explore the human mind. When it's presented with something it can't understand or that terrifies it, you kind of become your most base self in that moment, and you get to see the characters go through that and really show who they are.
Absolutely.
So let's get to the next question. I think we kind of covered this.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and ask it again, but if there's any additional info you thought of, we can cover it. Why go with the Akkadian culture for the show?
Ancient text. Good.
Yeah. I think we
pretty much expounded on this. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Ancient language. Good. Alphabetical.
Lore
yada
reasons.
yada. Cuneiform. Lore reasons. Dead language. Doesn't
Silas
have to be Latin.
is special boy.
We didn't want to fall into the trap of everybody speaks Latin because it's old.
Boring.
or Greek. Nothing wrong with those. Obviously very prevalent, but we could go a little deeper and pick something more specific.
Yes, indeed.
So, I feel like there's something fairly pointed about this question, but I can't put. I feel like this question needs to chill a little bit. I feel like we need to close the door on this question.
I'm gonna save what you're talking about for later, because there's a specific thing.
This question, we need to ice it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. I know exactly what you're saying, Ty.
Rain asks, do you have a favorite sound bite that you made?
So, Ty is saying all of this.
Grab your popcorn.
There is a joke in the syntax community about a certain fridge noise that makes an appearance in episode 12 when June and Silas are in the kitchen of Vincula and June opens the fridge. I made that fridge noise from scratch because I couldn't find one that I was satisfied. You know, when you open a fridge, you have the opening of the door, the kind of like dunk of the open, and then you have the bottles in the fridge rattling around. So there's always some movement, right? And then you have the humming of the fridge, all that kind of stuff. I could not find a sound that worked like that. So I made the sound with like an opening noise, a bottle rattling noise, and there's some other noises layered on top of that. And I was super proud of it because the final product sounded exactly like a full fridge opening, right? And I was
And it does.
very proud
It really
of it. And then I showed Ty very excitedly when I was done with it, and I was like, listen to this fridge noise. And he goes, why didn't you just find the sound on our platform that we use, which is SoundSnap? And I said I looked and I couldn't find anything, and I think he was asleep at the time, so I couldn't like message him and be like, hey, can you find me the fridge noise? By the way, Ty is our Foley finder person. He finds all of the Foley for me to add into the show. And he goes on SoundSnap for approximately 20 seconds and finds the exact noise I was looking for, and it upset me greatly. And I did not put the noise that he found in because I was so proud of my fridge noise that I kept it in. So that is the fridge noise that you hear and love in episode 12. But other than that, favorite sound bites might be that I've made from scratch. Probably gonna be the water pouring on the link stone, because that I made from scratch. Also, the marbles rolling and grinding in episode 8.
That's another good one.
Mm-hmm.
These are all good ones. The only thing I wanted to mention about the fridge noise is the disconnect in my head was I thought when you showed me the new noise that you were trying to tell me that's more what you were going for, because the way our Foley process works, fairly simple. Stella goes through and makes the list of Foley that she needs. Mm-hmm. I go to SoundSnap and I'm like, okay, I wrote the script, and Stella will include notes about like, okay, this is kind of more specifically what I'm looking for. I'll go through and find the noises and put a couple, sometimes it's just one, this Foley finding can be a big task into itself. Most of the time I try to get at least 2 or 3 to be like, okay, this is like an example. This is as close as I could get, that kind of thing. And then we put it, Stella puts it in and actually figures out which one's going to sound best. When Stella told me about the fridge door, I was in the mode of, we're fixing Foley. I'm going to have to go find a different one. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really thinking, oh, she's already made one, so we can just stick with this. I was like, okay, why don't we just go to SoundSnap and be like, all right, here's the sound, and it's got more bottles clinking. I remember focusing on the bottles because I was like, okay, the other fridge doors just sounded like an empty fridge opening. Exactly. So let's get one with the bottles
and that's what inside. I didn't like, to be fair. So
and it was fixed, but I was like, it's right here. And then I had to like double back and be like, but the sound you made was really good. It's
I was so upset. Fit. I cannot explain to y'all how like upset I was that the fridge noise could be found in that moment. And I didn't have to make that. And also Ty was like, we can just use this one. And I was like, but I made one and it's good.
And you know what? It is. Oh, I would have to say, since we do work on a lot of our own monster noises, the secret's out, everyone.
Yes.
We make a lot of our own in-house monster noises. One of my favorite ones to work on with you was the jellyfish from...
Yeah, the jellyfish was fun. From episode
16?
16, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it was 16, yeah. That one correct. Was... We've made a lot of good ones. I always get this feeling...
That
it's
one's
really
so
cool.
spooky.
Yeah, I always get this feeling when we do some of the other noises, like the weird dog-like creatures in Gaia. I always get this feeling when we're close, like it's kind of chilling. Like it's kind of going up your spine. Like you're like, because you're listening to it at max volume and you're like, all right, this sounds really creepy. That one was like a thunderstruck moment. That one was like, this sounds wild. Yeah. I don't want to be anywhere near this thing.
This one sounds, would you say, extraterrestrial?
Yeah, no, I don't. Not really. Actually, I was getting definitely more of a eldritch vibe.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, extraterrestrial
the chimey
could
kind of thing. It could be, but with eldritch, you get more of like a primeval extraterrestrial. Yeah. It's like something out there that's much, much worse than a mere alien.
Indeed. Yes, I love jellyfish too.
Oh yeah, the jellyfish is really good. Next question. Has there been any parts about working on syntax that you didn't like? Ooh, barbed question.
Wow, for real. Rain wants to know the drama, the tea.
Yeah. So Writing sessions with me. Let's talk
Awful.
about that.
Atrocious. Also directing sessions with Ty. Atrocious. No.
Oh, that's true. I'm such a prima donna.
No, I have to say I put so much work into this project because I love it so much. I literally I would not rather do anything else. I want to do this. Like, I want to work on syntax and I want to work on any other ADs for my life. That is what I want to do. And honestly, I haven't found anything that really has been like that. I've always had negatives to stuff I've worked on, but this is like one thing where I can't really I don't really have a strict negative. There's things that like aren't favorable or were tough. Like some of the episodes I had some harder times working different scenes out or like action scenes. Like for instance, episode 18 was really tough for me because there was obviously at the end there's such a long action scene. It's like 10 minutes or 5 minutes, something like that, of just raw adrenaline, like action pumping kind of scenes. And that was really tough. But the only other thing I really, I guess, isn't favorable is like asking for retakes sometimes. But I don't really have to do that very often now because we have directed sessions. So
it's not even because you have to ask. It's more like the, hey, sorry, this just didn't turn out. It feels bad because we have people that work so hard on it and you don't want to make them feel bad because they are doing such a great job. Exactly. But you have that moment where you're like, this needs to be done again. There's a thing.
Absolutely.
Oh gosh, I was laughing earlier because I was remembering you editing the action sequence because I think I had to be the biggest cheerleader of all time during the 18 process, the episode 18 process. That was
blood, sweat, and tears, everyone.
Blood, sweat, tears, despair, actual horror taking place in our daily lives because we were having to deal with this tremendous action sequence because we both wanted it. We didn't want to go back and like fix it to where it was a totally different scenario. We were like, this is how it goes, but this is going to be a tremendous undertaking to make it sound legit.
It was a big effort,
and I think you did a tremendous job on it, for real.
Yay.
It was tough, but it paid off tremendously.
I'm very proud of the end product for sure. So wouldn't change it.
What a product it is. If I do say so myself.
I'm not say so.
All right. Next question is by Gallant. And it says, background audio was great and really helped mentally visualize the story taking place. Is that a question or a statement?
It just says mentioned by. I just put them mentioned in there.
By.
Yeah.
Oh,
you know.
All right, I just patted ourselves on the back, and you included some praise in this Q&A.
I just wanted to say thanks. Thank you, Gallant. I really appreciate it.
I mean, we do appreciate the compliment. I was waiting for the Q part. I got duped by that.
Q. There's no Q.
There is no question.
My apologies. So thank you, Gallant. Appreciate that so much. I didn't want to leave it out because they asked. So
no, of course. You're saying it went on the Q&A form?
Yes, it went on the Q&A form.
Okay,
yes,
that's fair enough.
All of this was on the Q&A form only. So
Stella does tremendous work with the background audio and stuff because that I help pick the Foley, but obviously all of the engineering and things are done by Stella, and it really helps sell the scene because I think something that ADs have to work on really hard is how they're going to present their story so that it's not an audiobook.
Yeah.
Because most audiobooks may have a background track, may not, but it's mostly just somebody reading out everything for you. And you have to visualize it with that person. You may get some voice acting. It's all voice acting, but it's like, there's a difference between the narration and the acting portion. So with an AD, it's like, okay, how do we sound distinct and how do we make it sound like an actual radio play? Older school way of putting it. And Stella had an idea of how this was all going to go with the recorders and the ambiances and things like that. I think Stella works harder on the ambiances than anything else.
I worked really hard on the ambiances. Yeah.
You hear the recorder click on, and hopefully those couple of things that she does that don't seem like much at the time just go so flawlessly into it that you're like, okay, I know where I am just based on the sounds I'm hearing.
That's always the goal. I
Some
make a
places
very
will be new.
specific place or very
Right.
specific
Some places
ambience
will
for
be new.
everywhere.
But some things you'll be like, okay, I remember this. I know exactly where I am. They don't even have to talk about it. I've heard this before. I am in so-and-so's office. I am at such and such a place.
That's always the goal for ambience, for sure. Thank you.
So, next question. I think we've talked about this a little, so you can just give us a numerical answer if you want. Yes. But this question comes from Dallas and says, exactly how long did you work on that refrigerator noise?
Probably an hour.
And time well spent it was. Next question. What is the process of layering and adjusting the volume of the layers like?
Oh, okay. So I will try not to expound too much upon these kind of more technical questions. I'm not sure how interested everyone is in them, but I will make it clear what I do. So I use the program, or the DAW, which is Digital Audio Workstation.
Wow. You've got an acronym and everything.
And everything. I use Adobe
want to
Audition.
write, and I pick up a pen and paper. You don't see me calling
first
it
of all,
a pap.
you're a liar. You do not pick up a pen and paper. Don't even
Hold on, I'm sitting down at my pap, or pen and paper, as I call it.
Pap smear. So, basically, I use Adobe Audition, and with Adobe Audition, you have something called a multi-track, which is what all of the episodes are made on. And each multi-track can be used for a different purpose. Not everyone does it the way I do, but I enjoy the way I do it mostly because it gives me a lot of control, and it's how I learned as well. But basically, for the process of layering and adjusting the volumes, so in a SFX point of view, basically I have an ambience track. Sometimes there are several ambience tracks, just depending on the location, and the mic as well. Because if it's Silas's mic, his little friend, as he calls it, I have a layer or a track of static on as well, just so it gives that kind of underlying bad quality of a personal microphone that's not quite utility grade. And basically what I do is I take each track and I match them at decibel ranges. So usually for when I'm in the editing mode and I haven't gotten the final mixer done, I try to have all of the dialogue tracks at around -6 to like -12 decibels. They're all in the yellow range of decibels, which is where most of our hearing lies. So like it's not too loud, but it's not too quiet either. You can pick up the nuances really easily. For SFX, I go a little bit lower usually, unless it's a really loud SFX that I want to be like very prominent in the scene. Those are usually around -20, -25, something around there. And then for ambiances, I try to keep it around like -30 or lower, like -30 to -40 range. And that just makes it to where kind of every level of decibels is being taken up. So when you have the layering and the volumes and everything, they're hitting your ears at different waves, right? So it's a very much like it's a very sensory experience. Everything matters as far as the layering goes. And then as far as like adjusting layers of SFX for like certain sounds, it's really dependent on the sound and depending on where it's coming from, or if it's close or far away, anything like that. But generally it's like I layer a couple sounds on top of each other with different timings, and they're normally around the same volume level So once again, using that decibel range as sort of a guide for that. It's very important because you want it to all be pretty matching as far as the decibel selection goes. So yeah, if that made sense.
Was that sufficiently opaque to everyone else? I'm so glad.
I tried to be specific.
The thing I'll say is I am really impressed with how far you've come along with the editing process, because when we started this, you had zero experience. I only knew Premiere because I do video work. We did the first episode or two of Syntax in Premiere, and somebody said, "You're a dumbass."
Which is why they're being reworked.
Yes, exactly. They are being reworked. But lovingly said, "We're dumbasses for doing that." Got Stella started on the process. And here, a year later, Stella is now pretty far along the editing process. Obviously, there's still tons to learn in any field that you're in.
Always.
But now you are like, you got peers in the AD world now, where you're figuring out how all this stuff works and looking at the science behind it and making it all blend together. And all of that just within the last 12 months or so. Very impressive.
Thank you. I work hard, everyone, but I love it. I promise. It's great.
We will do it as long as we can, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Next question. When you decide you want to come up with an original sound, what's the thought process and how do you eventually come to select your choice? I think we went into detail about one sound in particular, but we'll try to ignore that one.
Yeah. So whenever we want to do an original sound, as in we make or curate the sound a little bit more specifically to our taste, I would think the most often it comes up in is ambiences and monster noises. So
monster noises are the big one.
Monster noises are the big one because those are always original. We don't just put anything in and leave it there. Like that has never been done.
Even if it's a creature that's really close to an earth analog, we're always like, we want to make it sound just off enough that you get the vibe from it, but there's something weird going on.
Yes. Yeah. We always want it to be unique to us in our soundscaping. So we already knew going into Syntax that we wanted all of our creatures to be that way. So there wasn't really a decision point for that, other than that we already knew from the beginning that all of the creatures that we set out to create, we wanted to have original sounds to them. And then for the ambiences, we're kind of dealing with not familiar places to everyone. So they can be a little bit more familiar. We have, for instance, the first breach, which is Gaia. That's definitely like a familiar noise more so to everyone. It's forest noises and all that kind of stuff.
Bugs chirping constantly, birds going overhead, but odd birds.
But odd. Yeah, there's always something a little bit different with the ambiences. And oftentimes I layer ambiences in a specific multi-track and then export that as its own MP3 to add in later, which is a little bit more technical. But basically, it's just saying that we have our own way of doing ambience as well, where it's not a cookie cutter ambience either. So I would say pretty much the decision is never a thing because it just always happens. It's never really, we don't need to make that we don't need to have that moment where we're like, oh, should we make this noise, because we always do. So there's not really a decision behind it. But
yeah, it's definitely more of like a policy, more
yeah,
or less,
exactly.
Because it's like, if we're in a strange place and we're seeing a strange thing, then those are the two things that need a different sound. I don't want to really just pull a stock noise off of our thing, which you can have plenty of good quality sound, but it's not going to sound like what you want it to sound like. And trying to make it all from like a voice file, like trying to do it yourself, is very tough, because we're not always going to be out here super Foley maker Gage Odom and be able to squawk and make it sound like exactly an odd
there
bird.
Are some, yes.
There are some.
Gage.
We do credit Gage with making the Gaian bird in particular. But
bird.
Like Stella said, it's like we know what we want to sound odd, and we can take things that sound good, but make it sound different by adding other things to it
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
distorting it and doing things, lots of different techniques to it. I kind of want to tie this in with the next question. I'll go ahead and
Yeah.
ask it. How do you make your own original sounds? And if I could, we should talk about one noise in particular.
Okay.
And I was going to talk about the dog-like creatures from Gaia, which is one of the first monster noises that we made.
Yes.
Because we have the Gaian bird, but I think that was a little less interesting to work on. But with the dogs, it was like, okay, later you get a little bit more of a look at their morphology because you have that kind of dragonfly head that they mention in episode 9 and 10. And it kind of reveals the process of making that sound. Because, okay, we said this is a creature. It's going to sound like something. It's going to evoke something. So we started with the obvious wolf howls, right?
Yeah, coyote.
Good starting point. Coyotes and wolves, we get the dog howling noise, and we're like, okay, you've got something canine going on. You put that in. And then we were like, okay, we already know how this creature looks like. We know that it's partially a bug. So how we can make this sound a little different is we can actually put a bug noise into it.
Yep.
So when we opened up Audition, we were like, okay, what's a good bug that's kind of irritating and kind of not really threatening, but something that we could put with a wolf noise to kind of mess it up. So we got a cicada call because they've got that really harsh, not a chitter, yeah, like a shriek. And then we have to be really specific about it because you don't just want to have that noise playing in the background because of course a cicada can hold that noise for a long time. So this was like, a 30-second, 60-second stretch, whereas a wolf can howl for like, 10, 15 seconds at a time. So we actually changed the way the sound goes so that it like the cicada noise rises with the wolf howl, peaks, and then fades out. And then after you've done that, because that's actually a little more time intensive than you might think, making the volumes like match super specifically and make it fade out with the rest. Then you have to like distort it in a way that makes them kind of blend. Because believe it or not, there's not a magic button on Audition that just says blend.
Yeah, no.
You have to be like
all of the volume and everything or effects are done by hand, pretty much.
Exactly. You have to be like, okay, I'm going to give it a little reverb. I'm going to give it a little echo. I'm going to give it a little this, give it a little that. A lot of it is experimentation because neither one of us are sound engineers. But because we can sit and just kind of tool around with it, we're able to get to a point where we're just listening to it and we're like, okay, that's a thing. It still sounds like the other thing, but now this is its own thing. Something else is going on here. And then later you're looking at the creature in episode 10 and you're like, oh, it's a dog with a bug head. Okay. In its most basic form, I now kind of get it. And that kind of expands to all of our other creatures.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
It's a very similar process that we would do. And sometimes we use, sometimes we do use voice files and sometimes we're pulling files from SoundSnap. And sometimes, we're looking at the inspiration and things and pulling from other sources. So you'll have to see what all else we have in store because we got plenty more monsters to go.
Plenty more sounds to create, for sure. Good. All right, so that wraps up our editing questions portion. Thank y'all for those questions. Now we have a section which is kind of like a commentary as well as like suggestion section for what people really liked during season 1 and what they wanted to see continue during season 1. Or after season 1 rather. So what they liked from season 1 and what they wanted to, keep going. So if you want to read this first one, Ty, because it's from your boy.
Question from Reximus. Rex would like to see more of the lore. Translation scenes were top-notch writing. I want to know more about what got fuzzed over while Silas was working.
Very good. Translation scenes. We were... we can actually say this, but we were very worried that people would be bored during the translation scene.
That's true. I remember ages ago, we were like, is anybody even going to listen to this?
Yeah, we were so worried that they were going to be the most hated parts of Syntax. And now everyone is kind of like more translation, more, which we love. We love it. So, do you have anything to say about that time?
There will be more.
There will be more. We can guarantee there will be more translation.
We will guarantee more lore and more translations.
Mm-hmm. Very exciting. And as far as wanting to know more about what got fuzzed over while Silas was working, if you listen, maybe read the transcripts, anything like that, you may notice a pattern with those. So,
and just to be clear, you're not going to find like extra info on the transcripts. It's just you might like sometimes seeing it, you'll be like, oh, I see what's getting like.
I have a better time reading sometimes, so
yeah, I'll maybe a visual perspective to it when you see the segments that are always getting
just a little
knocked
helpful
out
for you.
But also, why would they be getting fussed out in the first place?
A little weird. It's probably the editor fucking up, you know.
Yeah, very likely.
All right, so this next one was said and suggested by Rain. Rain says, I really loved how we got some segments of the characters sitting around the campfire and airing out issues with each other, talking about theories and just interacting with each other. It's really nice to either get validation that my personal theories were right, or have a character say something that makes me think of previous information in a new light, without it feeling like the writer is using the character as a mouthpiece. It also helps keep me invested in every character equally, even the ones who get less screen time, quote unquote. So yeah, this is again one of our favorite parts is just character interaction. We love having the personalities be displayed. We love the little jokey moments and the theories and everything, because you know, we don't want to make it seem like the characters have all the information ever. They never do, right? It's always going to be guessing game. We're the only ones. Yeah, except for Miss Vo, but she's dead, so it doesn't matter.
True. Answer's dead and buried.
Answer's dead. So we really like that. We really wanted to keep the whole mindset that they don't know what's going on. Like, kind of how characters in a D&D campaign don't have all the information. While they're, you know, they're owners, quote unquote, the people playing them have more information.
They're players. They're players. Think we also call those.
I forgot the term.
They're owners.
So we didn't want it to be like
my pet high elf rogue that I keep on a leash at all times.
We didn't want it to be apparent that, you know, they had all the information, because they don't. They're going along in this story as y'all are listening to it. So they're figuring things out, being surprised and being, you know, fearful of this wondrous new environment and new places that they're going to. So that's really important for us, I think.
A lot of times on the outlines, we will more talk about who's involved rather than what's involved. We obviously want to present a plot to you guys, and we want to have a story that we're presenting, but we're doing it through the context of specific character interactions. So we'll look at a scene and we'll be like, all right, who's here? Who's interacting this time? And then we get to personalize the information we're presenting through each character, and it's less author to listener and it's more character to listener because of that.
Absolutely.
Very good point. And I'm glad we will be able to have more of that as well.
Me too. I love
just with perhaps less of
people
them
around. Yeah.
Sorry, Rain.
But there still will be more, we promise.
More characters or more stories?
More stories. More talking, theorizing.
Less characters, more stories.
Alrighty, next one time.
The next one was suggested by Galland, and he said, great series, creating dozens of theories on what could happen next. The breach brings the possibility of boundless bestiaries, environments, and horror. The cast really bonds over the progression of the story, also leaving the possibility of a will they, won't they.
I love the ambiguity of that statement. I wonder what they're wondering the will they, won't they is. There's something Stella likes a lot about syntax. So
maybe they're kind of nuts, some of these characters.
Just a little bit insane, but you know, that's fun. That's fun, you know?
It is neat too that we had this whole breach thing, because unlike a lot of other stories, the vehicle kind of makes itself. You go into a new world and you don't have any genuine idea what's going to wait on the other side.
Yes.
Because we've had 3 worlds now total explored, because in 18 they go very briefly into the 3rd one.
Yep.
And each time, while you've had the translation part of the book kind of give you a taster, you haven't ever had the full idea of what to expect. And every time you're going to go into a new place and it's going to be something wonderful and crazy and horrifying.
Really fun to have those different kind of environments,
and keep
as
people
Galen
theorizing.
says. Yes, indeed. Love it. We love it. Great. Thank you, Galen, for saying that. We appreciate it as well.
Appreciate all these, honestly.
Yes. Oh, for sure. We appreciate y'all sending anything once again, like I said before. I'm gonna kind of take this next one all together since it's more basically just saying stuff and suggesting things.
Sure, yeah.
So this next portion is said and suggested by Dallas. He says, the translations are definitely some of my favorite parts. They reveal a lot of the lore while being ominous and eerie. I hope we can continue to get more translations or something that can take their place. Just to expand on that really quickly. Yes, more. And once again,
there will be more.
We are thrilled that y'all love the translations again, because we did not expect that, but we are very, very happy that
we thought we were going to have to cut them short.
We're very excited. And Dallas makes an interesting point that something can take their place in the future. I would be on the lookout for that as well. Some exciting plans to come. Okay, next is same from Dallas as well. I hope to see more of the creatures from the nightmares / experiences that the individual breachers have described. So we did kind of talk about this briefly before. Someone had asked
some of the backstories were going to get touched on again.
Yeah, someone had asked if they would get touched on again. Yes, maybe. Who knows? Really? No, actually.
Future editor Stella can can you fix that for us?
Which one do you want, Ty? Which answer do you want? I said all of them just in case.
That's true.
Okay, next is, I also hope to learn new information about the breach, how it works, and what it really is. I think it's going to be interesting to touch on that a little bit more later. We did expound upon it a little bit in episode 10. Yes, 10. Where Cassius and Silas were having the conversation talking about the experiments that they had at Vincula with the breach and the kind of nuances that the breach holds as far as a weird kind of metaphysical structure, if you will. But yeah, I love talking about the breach because I think it is really interesting. Not to toot our own horns or anything. I know that sounds like that. But
wow, our story, it's just the most enticing, the most intriguing.
I think it's very interesting, okay? I don't want to present things that aren't interesting to me to y'all because I want everything to be cool, you know? I want it to be interesting to me, and if it's interesting to me,
we don't want to do things because they're trendy.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
We want to do it because we love it.
And just regarding the breach and everything, there is I was partially inspired, just a different piece of media, by House of Leaves, the book by Ty, who's the author? I know you have it right next to you. Daniel Z something.
Mark Z. Danielewski.
Oh, I had it backwards. Mark Z. Danielewski.
You were putting Daniel in front. It's Mark, and then it's Danielewski. I think that's how you say that.
So,
yes, I'm reading it right now because that's why the book is back here.
Yeah, so House of Leaves definitely has like kind of a weird metaphysical thing happening with some of the stuff in that book. So I really grabbed hold of that, and I thought it was really interesting. It's always interesting to study things on like a quantum or metaphysical level, so really, really interesting to
and see, I have to read this book because I'm catching up on modern literature from 20 years ago.
Yes, indeed. And then the last piece we have from Dallas is bring good moths back, please. We'll see.
Your suggestion is being considered.
We are considering it. We love the moths though. They are good moths. All right, so next,
They're
thank
good
y'all.
Moths, Brent.
They're good moths, Brent. We really loved. Thank y'all so much for talking about all of the things that you liked in season 1. We really, really appreciate it. And hopefully we'll be able to bring you more new things that you'll like and also some, returning things that you liked as well. So very
Definitely.
good.
Maybe.
Okay. Maybe.
No, we won't.
No. Who knows? Okay, so this
Good
next
cover,
category is questions without categories. So this was just a little thing I put down if there were any questions that might not have fit
Miscellaneous.
the previous categories.
Errata.
Yeah, exactly.
This first question comes in from Rex, and I think that this is an astute question. So we definitely wanted to make sure that it was included.
Mm-hmm.
Rex asks, when will there be a Syntax / Disney's Atlantis crossover?
Mm-hmm. So, Rex
Let's
also
talk about this, Milo Thatch.
So, Rex also put right after tongue emoji face, y'all know.
Tongue face.
Feel free not to use this. I just want to get Stella's goat. Okay. We know, Rex. We know you do. There's no crossover, unfortunately, unless Disney calls me in the next little bit.
The mouse couldn't give us,
the mouse couldn't give us enough money. We love Syntax too much to sell it. Sorry, guys.
It's true. Sorry that we couldn't bring you the Atlantis Syntax AU that you were hoping for.
Yeah, maybe eventually. Y'all can write one. There's fanfiction, ao3.net /syntax podcast. It's on there, so...
I will read all of them. So you know.
I will read all of the fan fictions we get if we ever get them.
Mm-hmm. If anybody feels like writing them, I will read them.
We will give you all the kudos and comments. Okay, we promise.
Okay,
so after
for anybody who doesn't
joke,
have context, obviously, I think we mentioned it earlier, but Disney's it's not even just called Atlantis; it's Journey to Atlantis, right?
No, Atlantis Lost Empire.
Atlantis Lost Empire. Okay, right. I had not seen it. It was one of those movies where I could not watch it because my family was like, "Ooh, it's got spooky things in it and stuff like that." But Stella really enjoys it a lot. Like, even now, and we had a chance to watch it together, and it was like, okay, all right, I see. And I cannot describe to you the feeling that hit me when after all the
we
character
started
names,
making Syntax and everything.
this was Syntax was already like on the road, like we were a couple episodes in, and I'm finally like, okay, everybody's making Atlantis jokes because something's going on here and I gotta find out what it is. And unbeknownst to me, the main character's name is Milo Thatch.
Yep.
Which sounds awful similar to some backstory naming that we've been doing for one of our characters. And I think I could feel my head spin at a couple G's over towards Stella's direction.
Yeah.
While we were watching.
I remember the look of intensity that Ty had.
But if we're honest, I really think, I mentioned earlier, we struggle a little bit with originality. And I could argue all day that nothing's actually new under the sun. But I think we stand really apart from what Atlantis is doing. And the thing that people are picking up on might be some of the naming conventions, but more importantly, the found family vibe.
Oh, absolutely.
The vastly different experiences from side characters that may not ever get brought back again, that matter in that moment, that give them something to do in the story, even if their screen time is fairly limited.
Yeah.
And they're all going to work together. It's almost impossible to think that all of these characters would up and decide, oh yeah, we're just gonna do this, stick up for each other. But the whole draw of a found family is they're gonna do something crazy for each other that's gonna defy all known logistical,
you wouldn't normally
tactical
think these
odds.
People would go together either. Is 90%
exactly.
Of the time.
They've known each other for like the equivalent of an hour and a half of screen time, but they're going to have something develop between them that is going to be stronger than steel.
Absolutely. We love it.
But if Disney wants to talk to us, they're going to have to up the bet a little bit, or up the offer.
I don't trust that.
This is our
mouse.
baby. Oh no.
All right. So our next sets of questions are asked by Rain. Number 1 is, what's been your favorite part of working on Syntax so far? And this is a question for everyone. So I've actually gathered everyone's answers
Mm-hmm.
But also, I would like us to answer first, Ty. So if you want to go first, that would be great.
Oh, I go first?
Woo, yeah.
Oh, okay. I mean, favorite part. You're asking me to take apart my favorite child again and name a specific organ. Like it's all been so fantastic to actually be able to work on this because you know, everybody's like, okay, we can't all be starving artists and go out here and write something that's actually an interesting story. But I would definitely say that when working on syntax, I'm always thinking about what people are expecting will happen.
Yeah.
And being able to write the bits where everything goes so south that you don't anticipate it and you're just left kind of going, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck, what the fuck?
Heavy breathing.
Are my best moments that I always think about a lot. When it's the things that go in ways that you wouldn't expect and trying to predict how you think it's going to go and then not going that way is very good.
Yes.
What about you,
I do
Stella?
love those moments. Dang. I thought I was going to have like a great answer for this. I'm not going to lie. And then we started talking about it and I was like, oh no, I love this part and this part and this part and this part.
You lost it. You lost the lost the mojo right when the question came up.
It's very much the same vibe as Ty. I love every part of this, or I would not be doing it, quite frankly. I just love all of it. I would say the part I love most, or my favorite part, would probably be, I would say, oh my gosh, why is this so hard? Honestly, I would say the reactions of everyone to people listening. Like, whenever I can give people, like our cast and crew, the acknowledgement that I feel like they deserve as far as their work and everything, and I have people who have messaged me and said, oh my goodness, I love this part, and this part was so insane, I can't wait for season 2. Or, you know, we just have our numbers from Acast or our Spotify numbers, anything like that, presenting that to the cast and having them be just so floored by it, because a year ago they never thought this sort of thing would happen either. You know, it's very much all of our first rodeo in audio drama, as well as just this kind of platform in general. And I think everyone is really, really grateful for everyone who's been listening, and really amazed that it can already touch so many people. And I think that's the best part for me. That's what it all really comes down to, is me making something I love, people responding to it, and then having people that are involved with it being so happy about the responses as well. So I think that's my favorite part. Now I do have the cast and crew's answers for this as well.
Would you like to alternate reading what their responses were?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
So I can go first, just because,
sure.
and then we can alternate. So their answers their answers are far more short and simpler than mine usually. But our first answer comes from Beth, who plays Cassius, our lovely voice actor. They say the table reads were by far the best part. I love the table reads too. We will have them all edited and put on Ko-fi and Patreon eventually.
Energies.
We promise.
So much energy behind those.
So much energy. The cast getting together was great too.
The next response comes from Mo, who is Lizzie in the story. Mo says, wonderful cast and producers, i.e. bitches, and the table reads.
And this fits because Mo and Beth are insane at the table reads together, and we love them for it. They are swapping the brain cell left and right.
Oh no. Mo is the one that was gonna pitch a fit if the love triangle didn't happen.
Yes. And
we
then
were
Beth jumped
crafting
on
the
that
story.
train. Beth
Mhm.
jumped on there real quick. Yes. Yeah,
So funny.
they are great. And honestly, it's a joy to see everyone reading their lines for their characters. It's really, really fun.
Mhm.
Okay, then we have Jules, who plays the lovely and adorable Alex. And Jules says, bringing the adorable Alex to life, which is a very cute and sweet Jules answer.
Oh, so many of our characters are like absolutely just that, brought to life
Yes.
by the
Oh,
actors.
absolutely. Absolutely. They do a wonderful
I'm
job.
so impressed with all of them, especially since for a lot of people, this is kind of like their first real VA gig. And we wanted to be able to showcase their talent. They showed a propensity for it, and now they're getting their chance to show it. And it's been
They
lovely.
definitely are. They're definitely showing.
The next answer comes in from Cody, who plays Greg on the show. Cody says, the recording sessions, definitely the highlight of the week.
And if you listen to our bloopers, you can hear why Cody says that.
They're gonna eat my ass.
They're gonna eat my ass.
Jay, they're gonna eat my ass.
Cody has some of the best bloopers on the show. They make me laugh so hard, and he is just a hoot whenever we're recording together. So I love our recording sessions in particular. So definitely agree with Cody. They are definitely a highlight of the week. Okay, our next one comes from Elgin, who plays Jeremiah or Jay. He says, honestly, I think it's the crew as a whole. He says that everyone has been great to work with, and for this being a first for everyone, I don't think there could have been a smoother learning experience than this. So I agree with that. Kind of expanding on what Ty says is that, you know, no one has done this before. This is our first rodeo as far as producing an audio drama, audio fiction at all, and it's everyone's really first crack at voice acting. But I think everyone, as Elgin says, I think everyone has had a very smooth learning experience. Everyone's done a great job improving, and I think it's really shown for them as well. So
it's been good.
Been good.
Been good. Can't believe that it's still going well.
Me neither. It's a great show.
So we are happy to be here. Next response comes from Kai, who played
Rip.
Moment of silence, please. Okay, that's enough. That was Miss Vo. Kai's response is, I'd say probably meeting so many new people, and it's been a blast voicing a very different personality from myself. Almost therapeutic.
That's hilarious. Yes.
Kai, we have to apologize to Kai profusely a lot of times because Kai is a sweet person in real life. Yes. And then the thing is, though, is that her voice lends itself to that villainous aspect.
And she is so good at playing Vo. She is so amazing at Vo. And it really, every time she takes a line, I'm like, oh, I want to kill you. I guess that's a good thing. So I often have to apologize to her and be like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean that.
Kai, I promise, some other show we're going to get you in as a wholesome, sweet person.
Cinnamon roll vibes for Kai at some point.
It just sounds so good. First off, we're not trying to typecast you, but it does sound really good.
It does sound great. Okay, then we have last but certainly not least, Renee, who plays our lovely Mama June that everyone loves and adores.
Mama June.
Renee says, meeting and getting to know so many unique and funny people and watching as everyone grows and gains experience with their talents. Again, I think this is like, we kind of are finding our own found family within the TSP team.
Oh no, that's a found family on a found family.
Oh goodness. But yeah, I would definitely agree with Renee there. It's definitely everyone has grown a ton and love working with everyone as well. So yay. So
that's been everybody's favorite part. We'll return now to the mainline questions. More questions from Rain for miscellaneous questions.
Yes.
Is there anything you do differently knowing what you know now?
Yes.
No.
not start on Premiere.
Okay,
Start
but
on
I'm
Audition.
not the editor, so
Also, get everything done before it goes out to before the weekly production period.
We're gonna experiment with that, aren't we? We're gonna try to get the whole
Yes.
thing batched out and then do it instead of. That's something that we haven't really mentioned a ton. I wonder if people know.
Oh,
Syntax
it's because I was going for
made.
this next question.
Oh, is it talked about a little bit? Oh,
Yeah.
advice. I guess. Yeah. I was okay. Let's go ahead. You ask that question, and then I'll mention it because it is kind of loved.
So, do you have anything differently that you do now, knowing what you know?
No, I'm serious. I don't think you need Writer Duet because I write on Writer Duet.
Yeah.
But initially we used Google Drive, and I think you can use Google Docs through Google Drive to make your scripts and stuff. I don't think you necessarily need a good script writing software. It definitely helps a ton, and I would recommend it. But as far as doing things differently, from my end, no, not really. There were things along the way, and there were learning experiences, road, you might call them bumps in the road. But overall, I would still do it the same way because I would still want to get to the same place.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely understand that for sure. Okay, so the next question that we kind of want to tie into this previous one is, what advice do you have for people who might be thinking about starting an audio drama or podcasting in general? So, what we did for Syntax season 1 is basically, as the show was coming out, we were writing season 1 a few episodes ahead. We were generally 4 to 5 episodes ahead in writing terms at any time.
But we didn't have the whole thing done. And the most pertinent piece of information is we didn't have all of the voice lines or the editing done before the episodes, like, before the season happened. If you think about it from a timeline perspective, the way season 1 was done, an episode would get written, and then as soon as it got finished and edited, Stella helps me reread and edit. And so once we're done with that part, it goes out to the cast. Then they have to get the lines into us, and then the lines have to be edited in Audition and put in, and then the Foley has to be acquired, and then the episode has to be shipped. And if you think about, we were always 4 or 5 episodes ahead. That means that we only had about a month or 2 gap to play with.
Yeah.
Because there's 2 weeks between episodes. And by the time we got to the end of the season, that gap was getting real tight because we burned up some of our we were burning up some of our extra room. We weren't 5 episodes ahead by the time episode 18 was in production,
which altogether wasn't entirely our fault. There were some extenuating circumstances, but we prepared for that, sort of. We had that episode gap because we were like, we want to come out every 2 weeks, but we understand things can happen. So we've got these 3 or 4 episodes that we could fudge on and say, okay, if this doesn't get done this week, it gets done next week, because we're already ahead and we're just working as fast as we can. But it still burned the time up pretty fast. Yes. So we shall be experimenting with a different production style next
batch production
season. So yeah, hopefully that will kind of minimize the issues there,
and that might have benefits for our listeners too.
Yes. Oh, for sure. But other advice for people who might be thinking about it: just do it. Honest to goodness, just
embrace it.
If you have a story that you feel like will come across well in an audio drama format, or even if you just have a story and you really want to tell it, just do it. Because honestly, there's so much that I would be regretting if I did not just like ask Ty, hey, do you want to do a podcast maybe? It's
exactly how it went down.
Yeah, it really is just so simple as a question, like asking to a friend, or even just asking yourself, like, oh, do I want to tell this story? And if the answer is yes, then I would advise just trying your best to do it. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be like the biggest production piece ever. People will want to hear it. And if you believe in a product, and if you, put your whole breath, your whole life's energy into it, then not to sound dramatic or anything, we can see where Silas gets some of that from the creator. But honestly, if you believe in it, and if you feel like you need to tell it, then do it. That's the best advice I can give. Other than that, I honestly would tell you to reach out to people too, because the audio drama community
Definitely.
is very, very great. They are always willing to help people. They're always willing to give advice, and they're always willing to network and kind of reach out a hand to you. So do not be afraid to ask other creators or other voice actors you're inspired by to, aid in your quest. If you want to set out to make something, you can do it, and it would be great. I promise.
My only advice would be same thing Stella said, get started. Put a pen on paper, get an idea down, grab people, find like-minded individuals, or find a way to produce it yourself. I couldn't really speak to podcasting in general, because talk shows are a very different vibe from what we're trying to do. We don't do that. But if it is something that you are interested in and you have a passion about it, the way that it gets going is by sitting down and starting at some point. Don't say tomorrow I'll make that thing of my dreams. Do it now. Start at this exact moment and get your story put down. And the other thing that I would say on the other side of things is, once you get started, just be prepared to accept criticism. And I don't mean that to say like it's going to be awful. It's just, you make what you like to make, but be ready. Yeah, there are constructive critics out there. Like, don't take the advice of people who are like going to be like,
this sucks. Yeah,
right. Don't listen to
how it works.
But do be prepared to accept when people are like, okay, this could go a certain way, or this is something to look for, or this is something to consider. You don't have to accept it all, but be receptive to it.
Yes,
be prepared
absolutely.
to be like, okay, this could be altered a little bit and it could be better for it. There's a lot of experiences out there, and blending them into your story can often benefit it a lot more often than it could hurt it.
Yes, absolutely.
And just like Stella said, especially if you reach out within the audio drama community, we have met very few people who we wouldn't want to work with. This community has been very inviting, accepting, helpful, friendly, just all around great people to get advice from, to get stories from, just to get inspired from, just to hear praise from, anything that it could be. This community has been doing a really great job of it.
Absolutely.
And then at the end of the day, when you actually make your story, it can be a little bit of other people, but you can be happy that you made something. The joy of making is a big part of this.
Oh, absolutely. It's nothing,
something
like
that we
both
put a lot of heart into.
For sure. All right, I think that's good for that one.
We delved into that one a little bit.
We did. Alrighty. Do you
want to opened up next? About it? Sure. The next question, another one from Rain. What's been the hardest part of starting out making an audio drama? And are there any difficulties that were more specific to syntax?
Well, with the latter part of it, I think we touched on it with the production timeline that we had. I would say that was more specific to syntax.
Especially season 1, probably.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna have that was more just a
background style.
Yeah, but as far as like what's the hardest part of starting out was, I think
I know
probably...
what's difficult.
Oh, go ahead.
I think you're going to agree too when you really think about it. I think that we overestimated how tough the number of people we brought on board were going to be.
Oh, yes.
Not in terms of like dealing with them, but just having to have that many characters expounded within this story. Like that's so much audio work and so much editing and so much story stuff. A lot of other ADs, you'll probably notice if you listen to them, have a much smaller cast. There will be a lot of supporting characters, but we like to say there are 6 breachers and a couple of others. And 6 is a pretty fat number when you really start to think about it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're the only ones with that many characters, but a little more specific to syntax. It's like, okay, this ain't no 1 and 2,
a full cast
one person
AD
talking
is
a lot.
definitely a feat.
Whew, it's been a challenge.
Yes. But it's been, I think we've had the best learning experience because of it, honestly.
Oh yeah.
We've
We
learned
jumped in the
so
deep end of the
much.
pool.
Yeah. Which definitely could have been a little bit easier on us for sure if we had thought about it for doing our first show, but I know I take full responsibility for that because I was absolutely sold on Syntax being a full cast production from the time that it was written on paper, the title was placed. I was like, this is a full cast. So that's definitely a difficulty specific to Syntax for sure. As far as the hardest part of starting out making audio drama, I would say maybe the logistics side.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more involved as far as like the production, distribution.
I used to not
everything like
appreciate
that.
people calling themselves producers because I was like, what does that mean? How is that a job?
And now I'm a producer and Ty's like, Stella,
how do you do this?
I would
How
say
do you organize
that,
all this stuff?
yeah, there's a lot of organization. There's a lot of technicalities as far as distribution and publishing goes. So those are actually two different things. I didn't know that either. When you publish an episode, it's only published to your RSS feed, which is your regular audio feed from your distributor, I suppose. And then there's distribution, which is where it goes out to different platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, or Apple Podcasts, and everything like that. And there's a lot of little pieces involved in that, a lot of little things that you kind of have to do a little bit more research on, as well as like social media presence. That's something I really struggle with because it's just part of the game now. You have to learn how to be more present on social media and be uplifting your show and your cast members, and all that's great stuff, and I love networking and everything like that, but it's definitely a more time consuming process than a lot of people might think. So
indeed.
But as far as like making, like Ty and I were saying with the previous question, it's kind of like if you just do it, you'll figure out your way, and you can always ask for help. That's something that I've never been ashamed to do. I always ask for help if I need it. So if I have questions, let me reiterate, because I know Ty was going to yell at me about that just then. I felt it in my bones. If I have questions, I'll ask.
The gun was pointed to your head this time.
If I have questions, I'll ask. If I need help, I probably won't ask until I'm like desperate, which you should not do. You should ask for help.
Yeah. Don't be afraid. Like we said, don't be afraid to accept critiques or help.
So great. So this is the last question from Rain that we have. What's your favorite breach beast? TM trademarked.
Jellyfish.
Jellyfish, Ty says. I
like that. I liked that critter a lot.
Jellyfish was cool. Do you want to explain the episode and everything?
From episode 16 at the end when it yoinks Jay skyward, making a wild noise, and the breachers have to bring it down and rescue their long lost medic. That one was really cool. Yeah. Kind of a one-off. It doesn't. I don't think. Well, some of these may get revisited, some might not. But I think that with that one, it was like really just very cool sounding in the end, almost unexpectedly so. We want to make something really interesting every time, but that one was one that we stood back when we were done and we were like, that's really good.
We were really happy with the jellyfish for sure. I shall say I'm gonna do a nerdy answer because it's gonna be about the editing. I'm sorry. And I guess the scene in general. My favorite is the Thunderbird. And that's because I love the scene when Silas is scooped up after tripping on his feet like a dunce.
That was the first great action sequence.
That was the first great action sequence for me as well. And I really loved... And don't get me wrong, I thought the Acid Nessie scene was great too. I loved making that scene. But the Thunderbird scene was so high intensity. I really loved doing it. And also, I always think about it whenever I think about like how far I've come in editing. I feel like that's where I started to get it. I started to have that click in my head where I'm like, oh, this is how you edit things. This is how you make things sound decent. Like... So I love the thunder roar just because it was a cool idea too, making it, thunderous noises with its wings so that it fritzes out the microphone and all that kind of stuff was really cool. So
2 great answers. Well done,
enjoyable.
us.
Woo!
All
Alrighty.
right. Another set of questions. This one asked by Dallas. And the first one says, do you know how many seasons you want to do? Yes.
Yes, we do know.
Yes, we do. Would you like to read the next question, Stella?
Yes, of course. Next question is syntax going to be the beginning of a larger universe or self-contained?
Oh, this is one that I feel like we should answer and not, like, obviously not be spoilery, but hoping not to be spoilery by answering.
Okay, go ahead.
But I do feel compelled to say something because I don't want to fall into the sequelitis kind of thing where it's like, it has to have another one because this is the first or this is the biggest or this is the blah, 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 blah. At the same time, here's the thing. I've mentioned this before on other streams. Syntax is a self-contained story. Yes. It is designed to be that way. I'm hoping that at the end of it, you get this crunch, you get this one satisfying thing, and the story fins. That said, I don't think any ending is ever going to give you every person or every aspect's ending, right? Whether characters make it through, whether they don't make it through, whether their fate is ambiguous, whether we know exactly what happened, but wonder what else could have gone on. The thing is that with syntax, whether the characters go on or not, there is some plot devices inside the story that have ramifications for a much larger audience, you could say. Yeah. So it's like, okay, if I wanted to do if you wanted to already call it that, syntax 2, syntax protocol.
The syntax protocol.
You could do that because, like, if a breach is a thing, then it has problems for other people, probably. Something else is going on with that, and there's things that we could do with that. That said, I don't think we necessarily have like a dedicated plan to have offshoots and branches and the sequels and things like that. It's more just it could, but syntax 1 is self-contained. Yes. Ultimately, if I had to choose one or two of those answers, it's like it is self-contained. Absolutely. If syntax had to end, it can end on a good note and not leave you purely being like, okay, I've got to know where this goes.
Yeah, I need.
It's not going to be like that. Yeah. It's going to be like this is.
You may
need
more because you want more, but you don't need more because you need to know more necessarily.
Because we left you in the dark. Yeah.
I agree with that. Okay, so this next question. Wait, did you ask that or did I ask that?
I think I asked this the last one, right?
Okay. I think so. If you had unlimited resources at your disposal, i.e. money, time, and staff, is there anything you would have changed / done differently? If so, why? Yes.
Yes.
I would have bought everyone studio quality microphones, a sound booth, and more money to give them. Yeah.
This has been a project of passion a lot of times. We are very grateful for any support that we get. But it is funny because I definitely agree with Stella. If we had unlimited money, I wouldn't even necessarily go get other people. I like who we have.
Oh, I love who we have. Yeah.
It's definitely more that we would just equip them better because a lot of people are using the best setup that they can that we're able to, because none of us are really actual professional in this field. We just have varying budgets that we can spend on it on our own to make this happen. I mean, as far as staff, sure, it'd be great if we had like an actual Foley department,
social media manager,
like a social media manager, a lot of the extra stuff that bigger studios can have, because they don't just need somebody to make a story and somebody to put the story on audition and somebody to actually voice the individual characters, which is essentially the 3 people that you actually bare bones need. Yeah. We would be able to have a lot of folks that do very important stuff to make us bigger, to help us out. We would be able to have the equipment and things like that. But Yeah, that would definitely be the biggest one. Wouldn't you
Mhm.
say? Is just like better mics, because making it sound good does matter to a lot of folks.
Yes, 100%.
And if the time was different, I think if I had unlimited time at my disposal, because he mentions like, if that's another
Mhm.
resource, I think we would have started batch production sooner.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
we really wanted to just get Syntax off the ground because, technically speaking, if we had just waited for it to be written and produced, it wouldn't be coming out until last month.
Yeah, which would have been so long.
We just wanted to get it moving and get
Mhm.
our work out there. But now that we have the benefit of a little more time, we're like, okay, we're gonna make the whole thing and then put it out to you guys.
Yep.
Not all of Syntax, but like, a season. It's gonna
Sorry,
be
not
like,
everything
boom,
is
boom.
coming out next week or next
Sorry,
season.
yeah, no. Next week,
I
yeah,
was like,
season 2
whoa.
release date next week.
That's a little fast for me, even.
But yeah, I think that's a good answer. I think I would say the same thing. Like
Mhm.
with unlimited money, we would just be like, okay, can somebody like cook my meals for me?
Yes. Oh my
Can I
gosh.
get an
If I
in-home
had
chef so I
someone,
can just keep working?
if I had someone who's in-home chef and just like made me food so I didn't have to go get it or make it, that's all I need in life, honestly.
We are those kinds of people that sit at our desks and can sit here doing this for hours because
Yes.
I can't stress enough. It sounds pretentious, but we really love doing this. We want to make this a thing that we do, and we're putting all of our hearts, our souls, our minds into making it happen.
And time.
As much as is to spare that we can give that isn't dedicated to keeping us alive.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely think that would be our number one for sure. Number one things. Yeah.
All right. So, I think this is in reference to the previous one.
It is.
But I will end it on it because this sounds like a sweet way for it to go out. P.S. The above question is just out of curiosity. I love the show as it is, and I think everything has been great. Just curious as to your thoughts on it.
Thank you.
We appreciate you guys thinking about us, and we're happy that you guys think it's great. Because if you've listened to this Q&A for the full time span, you must have some kind of fascination with it.
You must. We are so
and we
sorry.
Are thrilled. You listening to this right now are some of our favorite people.
For
no
sure.
lie.
Absolutely. We appreciate you so much. We're
so glad that
happy.
you're along with the journey for us.
We are so happy that you have been on this journey with us and that you continue to hopefully listen. And we have so much more to bring you. We promise. More with
and not just
with
in syntax.
More with Twin Strangers Productions. We have more coming.
We got more.
Yes. So, I would like to just thank y'all again for listening and let us know if you have any other questions. We are on social media. We have a Discord now, which you can find also on our Twitter at Twin Strangers P. And just thank y'all so much for giving us the support. And we hope you continue to enjoy Syntax, the characters in it, and Twin Strangers productions of what we have to come. So, all right. Ty, you want to say a finishing piece there?
Thanks for listening. Until next time, strangers.
He's got to be a little dramatic, you know. Silas is real, everyone. I promise.
Help, everyone. I am trapped here in this establishment. I need you to call the police. I would like my mother to be notified.
Immediately,
I need to get out of here.
He's trapped.
I am the only sane person here. Please get me out.
This is not true. He's also insane. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope that you enjoyed, and we'll see you in season 2.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Season 2 of Syntax is coming soon. Stay tuned for updates on our Twitter, at TwinStrangersP, our Tumblr of the same name, and our subreddit, r/syntaxpod. Thank you, and keep your ears open for more